For 3 years, she was invisible. The unremarkable secretary everyone overlooked while quietly running an entire criminal empire from the shadows. Then one night, Daejin Vesper's most dangerous enemies forced him to bring her into the light, and the woman who walked into that ballroom wasn't the forgettable assistant he thought he knew. She was brilliant, devastating, and completely untouchable. Now powerful men across the city want to use her as leverage. Rivals are circling closer. And Daejin is realizing the person he trusted to protect his empire might be the only one capable of destroying it. If you want to see how this power game ends, stay until the final word. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The city skyline glittered behind 30 floors of bulletproof glass, but Daejin Vesper wasn't looking at the view. He was watching the man across his desk bleed. Not literally, not yet. But the sweat gathering at Marco Tellini's hairline told the real story, the kind of fear money couldn't hide and power couldn't erase. The Italian sat rigid in the leather chair, hands folded too carefully, like holding still might convince the predator in the room he wasn't prey worth chasing. Daejin let the silence stretch. 3 seconds. 5. Long enough for Marco's breathing to change rhythm. "You're early," Daejin said finally, voice flat as surgical steel. Marco's smile cracked at the edges. "Wanted to demonstrate respect for your time." Respect would have been not lying to my logistics team about shipment schedules for 3 consecutive months. The color drained from Marco's face. His mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish drowning in air. Daejin leaned back, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled in all directions, a kingdom built on hospitals, shipping routes, charitable foundations, and enough legitimate businesses to make the blood underneath invisible to anyone not looking hard enough. Journalists called him a philanthropist. Politicians called him a partner. His enemies just called him untouchable. They were all right. "I don't understand," Marco stammered. "The shipments arrived on time. Every container accounted for. The containers arrived. The contents didn't match manifests." Daejin's tone didn't shift, didn't heat. That was the dangerous part. "You skimmed product, sold it independently, kept the profit." "That's not. I would never." Marco. Just his name. Quiet. Final. The Italian stopped talking. Daejin glanced toward the corner of the office where Celine Vale sat at her desk, head down, fingers moving across her tablet with mechanical precision. She'd been there the entire meeting, 20 feet away, completely unremarkable. Thick-framed glasses, hair pulled back so severely it might have been painted on, charcoal cardigan over a beige blouse that had no shape, no style, no personality. The kind of woman men's eyes slid past without conscious thought. She didn't look up. She never did. "Celine," Daejin said. Her fingers stopped. She raised her head just enough to meet his eyes through those awful glasses, expression blank as fresh paper. "The documentation?" She stood without sound, crossed to his desk, placed a tablet in front of him, then returned to her corner. The whole movement took 8 seconds. Marco didn't even glance at her. Daejin swiped through the files. Transaction records, timestamps, manifests with his logistics chief's annotations highlighting discrepancies down to the ounce. Everything dated, verified, cross-referenced against 3 separate databases. Perfect. Like always. He slid the tablet across to Marco. "These are your signatures, your authorizations, your offshore accounts receiving payment." Marco stared at the screen. Something died behind his eyes. "I have a family," he whispered. "Then you should have thought about them before stealing from me. Please, just let me make it right. I'll return everything. Double, triple." "You'll return what you took," Daejin interrupted, voice still perfectly level. "Then you'll dissolve your operations in the Mediterranean and retire. Publicly. Completely. You have 72 hours. Marco looked like he wanted to argue, wanted to beg. Instead, he just nodded once, sharp and desperate, then stood on legs that barely held him. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you for... Marco." The Italian froze halfway to the door. "If you make me remind you again," Daejin said quietly, "there won't be a conversation. Just consequences." Marco left. The door clicked shut with the kind of final sound that meant the next time it opened, everything would be different. Dejin exhaled slowly, then glanced toward Celine's desk. She was already back at work, fingers moving, eyes down, completely absorbed in whatever task she'd returned to. Like the last 15 minutes hadn't happened. Like watching a man's empire collapse in real time was just another Tuesday morning in the tower. Schedule Reeves for Thursday, Dejin said. He'll need to oversee the Mediterranean transition. Already done, her voice barely carried across the room. Flat, efficient, forgettable. Reeves confirmed at 10. I blocked 90 minutes and arranged the briefing materials. Of course she had. Dejin turned back to the windows. The city stretched endlessly below, veins of traffic pulsing through arterial streets, ships crowding the harbor where half his legitimate shipping empire operated. Somewhere out there, Marco Tellini was probably calling his wife, his lawyers, maybe even his mistress, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. It wouldn't matter. By Thursday, new people would control those routes. Marco's name would get scrubbed from every contract, and in 6 months, nobody would remember he'd ever mattered. That was the beauty of empires built correctly. Individual pieces were replaceable. Loyalty was temporary. Trust was a commodity that depreciated the moment you tried spending it. Dejin had learned that lesson young. Watching his father get destroyed by a woman who claimed to love him, then walked away the second the money ran out. The old man had died believing in fairy tales about partnership and devotion. Died poor. Died alone. Died broken. Dejin built differently. Everything in his world operated on utility. You provided value, you stayed. You stopped providing value, you disappeared. Clean, surgical, permanent. No emotions, no attachments, no weaknesses that could be weaponized against him. He glanced back at Celine, still working, still invisible. 3 years she'd been sitting at that desk. 3 years of perfect execution, flawless organization, and complete reliability. She anticipated problems before they became crises. She remembered details he'd forgotten mentioning. She kept the entire operation running so smoothly he barely had to think about logistics anymore. And he knew almost nothing about her. Where she lived, what she did after hours, whether she had family, friends, interests beyond keeping his schedule optimized and his files immaculate. He'd never asked. She'd never volunteered. It worked. His phone buzzed. Dejin checked the message. Just 2 words from his head of security. Gala confirmed. Right. The political fundraiser tomorrow night. Black tie, champagne, handshakes with city council members who pretended not to know where his money came from. Governor Chen would be there, along with half the state's power structure. The kind of event where appearances mattered and alliances got quietly negotiated between dinner courses. Usually, Dejin brought Vivian Cross, a model whose company he paid for, whose discretion he trusted, and whose presence beside him sent exactly the right message about wealth and status without implying anything deeper than transaction. Except Vivian's agency had called this morning. Family emergency in Milan. Unavailable. Dejin glanced at his watch. 28 hours until the gala. Not enough time to vet someone new. Not enough time to ensure they understood the rules about visibility and silence. He looked at Celine again. She was still typing, eyes fixed on her screen, completely absorbed. Miss Vale. Her fingers stopped. She looked up, waiting. Tomorrow night, the governor's fundraiser at the Belmont. Are you available? Something flickered across her face. Not quite surprise, more like calculation, like she was running scenarios before responding. You need administrative support at the venue? She asked carefully. No, I need a companion. My usual arrangement fell through. Silence stretched between them. Celine's expression didn't change, but her fingers curled slightly against the edge of her tablet. I'm your secretary, she said quietly. Not an escort service. I'm aware. This is a professional request. You'll accompany me to the event. Remain at my side during necessary conversations. Help me navigate the guest list. You know the files better than anyone. Sir, I don't... 20,000 for the evening, plus wardrobe budget, car service. Whatever you need to be ready by 7 tomorrow. Her jaw tightened. For a moment, Dejin thought she might refuse anyway. Then she exhaled slowly. What's the dress code? Black tie formal. And my role? Stay close. Look appropriate. Don't speak unless spoken to. Her mouth did something that might have been a smile on someone else. On Celine, it just looked like resignation, accepting its next assignment. I'll need the final guest list, she said. Security protocols, any political landmines I should know about. I'll have them sent over within the hour. She nodded once, then returned to her work. Dejin turned back to the windows. The conversation was over. The problem was solved. Tomorrow night would proceed smoothly because Celine made everything proceed smoothly. That was her value, her utility. Nothing more complicated than that. The next evening arrived too fast. Dejin stood in his penthouse adjusting his bow tie while his security chief ran through protocols for the 100th time. Victor Kane was ex-military, 6'4" of controlled violence wrapped in an expensive suit, and the only person Dejin trusted to keep him breathing when things went wrong. 3 exits, Victor said, eyes scanning the apartment. Primary through main entrance, secondary through service corridor, tertiary via rooftop if we need extraction. You expecting trouble? I expect variables. Governor's events draw attention. Martinez's crew will be there. Probably Lucian Mercer too, since the syndicate's been pushing infrastructure contracts. Dejin's hand stilled on his collar. Mercer confirmed? Guest list shows +1. No name. That was interesting. Lucien Mercer ran one of the cleanest operations on the East Coast. Legitimate construction contracts mixed with just enough underground influence to matter. Smart. Careful. Ambitious enough to be dangerous, but disciplined enough not to make stupid moves. They'd circled each other for years without direct conflict, but circles had a way of tightening. Keep eyes on him, Dejin said. I want to know every conversation he has. Already arranged. Victor checked his watch. Car's downstairs. Miss Vale should be arriving at the lobby now. Right. Celine. Dejin grabbed his jacket, mind already shifting to the evening's objectives. 3 city council members he needed to press about zoning regulations. A quiet word with the police commissioner about overlooking certain shipping schedules. Maybe pull the governor aside if the opportunity presented itself. Standard political theater. He rode the elevator down to the lobby, Victor trailing 2 steps behind like a well-dressed shadow. The building's ground floor was all marble and indirect lighting, security disguised as hospitality, cameras hidden in architectural details. And standing near the entrance, talking quietly with the door attendant, was someone Dejin didn't recognize. Tall, elegant, dark hair falling in soft waves past her shoulders. A black dress that somehow suggested both sophistication and danger. Fitted enough to show a figure she'd apparently been hiding for 3 years, but cut with enough class to belong at a state dinner. Minimal jewelry, subtle makeup that emphasized sharp cheekbones and eyes that looked almost predatory without the glasses diffusing their focus. She turned as he approached. Dejin stopped walking, because it was Celine. Except it wasn't. The woman looking at him with quiet amusement carried herself completely differently. Shoulders back, chin level, gaze direct and unflinching. The mouse had disappeared. What remained looked like she'd been genetically engineered to dominate rooms full of powerful men without saying a word. Sir, she said. Just that. Just his title. But the tone carried something new, almost challenging. Dejin recovered fast. Had to. Victor was watching. The door attendant was watching. Security feeds were recording. Miss Vale? He kept his voice neutral, professional. You look appropriate for the venue. Her mouth curved slightly. That was the assignment. The car waited outside. A black sedan with tinted windows and a driver who knew better than to make small talk. Victor opened the rear door. Celine slid inside with practiced grace, and Dejin followed, suddenly aware of the confined space in a way he'd never been with Vivian. The door closed. They pulled into traffic. Celine crossed her legs, adjusted her dress, then met his eyes directly. Ground rules, she said quietly. I'm here as professional support, not decoration. I'll engage in conversation if it serves your interests. I'll defer to you in negotiations, but I won't pretend to be stupid, and I won't smile through disrespect. Dejin studied her. This version. This woman who'd apparently been hiding behind ugly glasses and shapeless cardigans for 3 years. Agreed, he said finally. Also. She reached into her small clutch, pulled out her phone. I flagged 6 people on the guest list you should avoid entirely. 3 more who'll try cornering you about the harbor expansion project. Governor Chen's chief of staff is sleeping with Martinez's finance director, which creates leverage we can use if needed. She'd done homework, real homework, the kind that went beyond guest lists and dietary restrictions. How do you know about the affair? Dejin asked. I pay attention. She put the phone away. People assume staff are furniture. They have entire conversations in front of me like I'm not there. I've been listening for 3 years. And you never mentioned any of this before? You never asked. Her gaze didn't waver. You wanted a secretary who managed schedules and kept files organized. That's what I gave you. Tonight you need something different, so here we are. The car slowed approaching the Belmont Hotel, a historic landmark wrapped in scaffolding and status, where charity galas happened and political careers got made or destroyed over dessert courses. Red carpet stretched from curb to entrance. Photographers clustered behind velvet ropes. Guests in formal wear climbed the steps while flashes painted everything stark white. Dejin felt Victor tense in the front seat. Cameras, his security chief said quietly. Wasn't expecting media presence this heavy. Governor's running for Senate, Celine said, still looking out the window. He needs the visibility, which means everyone here will be photographed, analyzed, and cataloged by morning. She turned to Dejin. Last chance to use the service entrance, she said. Once we walk that carpet, I stop being invisible. People will ask questions. Rivals will investigate. You sure you want that? It was a fair question. The smart play was exactly what she'd suggested. Slip in through the back. Keep her hidden. Maintain the status quo. But something in Dejin refused. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was just the simple fact that after 3 years of perfect service, Celine had earned the right to be seen. We go through the front, he said. Her expression didn't change. But something shifted in her eyes. Something that might have been respect. Or maybe just acknowledgement that he'd made his choice, and now they'd both live with consequences. The car stopped. Victor got out first, scanned the crowd, then opened Dejin's door. Flashes erupted immediately. Voices called questions. Cameras tracked every movement. Dejin stepped out, buttoned his jacket, then turned back to offer his hand. Celine took it, and when she emerged from that car, the entire red carpet went quiet. Not completely. Music still played. Photographers still shot. But conversations died mid-sentence. People turned, stared, tried placing the woman who'd just arrived beside Dejin Vesper, looking like she'd been born to stand in spotlights. She didn't react, didn't smile for cameras or acknowledge attention, just placed her hand lightly on Dejin's arm and walked beside him up those steps like she'd done it 1,000 times before. They reached the entrance, stepped inside, and Dejin realized he'd just made a mistake that would change absolutely everything. The ballroom was controlled chaos wrapped in champagne and string quartets. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across marble floors where 500 of the city's most powerful people pretended to care about affordable housing while drinking wine that cost more than most monthly rents. Waitstaff moved like ghosts between conversations. Security tried looking invisible while tracking every guest with eyes that never stopped cataloging threats. Dejin had been to 100 events exactly like this. Same people, same performances, same delicate dance of influence and transaction. But tonight felt different, because everywhere he moved, eyes followed, not watching him, watching her. Celine stood beside him near one of the tall windows overlooking the hotel gardens, champagne glass untouched in her hand, attention focused on the room with the kind of complete awareness that came from years of careful observation. City Councilman Richards, she said quietly without looking at Dejin. 3 o'clock. He's been staring for 90 seconds, wants to approach, but he's nervous. Dejin glanced right. Sure enough, Richards was hovering near a marble column, shifting his weight, eyes darting between Dejin and whoever he was pretending to talk to. Probably wants permission to build that casino complex near the docks, Dejin said. He does. I reviewed the proposal last month. It's garbage. Underfunded, poorly planned, and backed by people who'll cut him loose the second inspections reveal problems. You want me to refuse? I want you to let him pitch it. He'll embarrass himself without help. Richards finally worked up courage and approached, hand extended, smile too wide. Mr. Vesper, wonderful to see you. I was hoping we might... He stopped, stared at Celine, actually stared, mouth slightly open like someone had hit pause on his brain. She smiled. Cold, perfect. the kind of expression that could cut through steel without changing temperature. "Councilman Richards," she said, "I don't believe we've been formally introduced. Celine Vale." Richards took her offered hand like a man accepting evidence of his own execution. "Miss Vale, I've seen you at Mr. Vesper's office, haven't I?" "Several times. You were there last month discussing waterfront development. Wore the gray suit, asked for coffee with cream, no sugar?" The blood drained from Richard's face, because Celine remembering those details meant she'd been paying attention. Meant she mattered enough to Dejin that she retained information about relatively minor meetings. Meant he'd been dismissing someone he should have been courting. Richards cleared his throat. "Yes. Well, Mr. Vesper, I was hoping we could discuss the casino project," Celine finished. "Mr. Vesper has reviewed the proposal. It needs significant revisions before consideration." "I haven't actually," Richards started. "Revisions," Dejin said, picking up her thread without hesitation. "Double the capital investment, new traffic studies, independent financial audit, present revised documents in 60 days, and we'll schedule a proper meeting." It was a polite destruction. Richards knew it. Everyone within earshot knew it. The project was dead, the timeline impossible, and he'd just been dismissed in front of witnesses. "Of course," Richards managed. 60 days, thank you for your time." He retreated like someone escaping fire. Celine took a small sip of champagne, eyes still scanning the room. "That was cruel," Dejin said quietly. "That was efficient. He would have wasted 30 minutes pitching garbage. Now he'll spend those 30 minutes somewhere else." "You enjoy it." She glanced at him. Something sharp lived in that look. "I've spent 3 years watching powerful men underestimate me," she said. "Watching them look through me like I'm furniture. Yes, I enjoy reminding them that furniture has been listening the entire time." Before Dejin could respond, a new presence materialized beside them. Tall, mid-40s, perfectly tailored suit, and eyes that calculated the room's power dynamics faster than most people breathed. Lucien Mercer. "Dejin," he said warmly, offering his hand. "Good to see you." They shook. Professional, careful. Two predators acknowledging each other's territory. "Lucien, didn't know you were attending tonight." Last-minute addition, Governor's team reached out about infrastructure contracts. Lucien's attention shifted. "And you must be the mysterious companion who's causing quite a stir. I'm Lucien Mercer." He offered his hand to Celine. She took it, held his gaze, didn't smile. "Celine Vale, though I suspect you already knew that." Lucien's eyebrows rose slightly. "Should I have? You run intelligence operations throughout half the East Coast. A new woman appearing beside Dejin Vesper would trigger immediate investigation. I'd estimate your team identified me before we finished walking the red carpet." Silence stretched between them. Then Lucien laughed, genuine surprise breaking through calculated composure. "You're right," he admitted. "My people sent me your file 20 minutes ago, though I'll confess the photographs don't do you justice." "Photographs rarely capture useful information," Celine said. "They're just data points requiring context." "And what context should I be applying?" "That depends on what you're hoping to learn." They were circling each other now, verbally, carefully. Dejin recognized the pattern. Two intelligent people testing boundaries, looking for leverage, measuring threat potential. Lucien turned to Dejin. "You've been hiding remarkable assets, my friend." "Miss Vale manages my schedule," Dejin said neutrally. "She's hardly hidden." "No, just overlooked." Lucien's attention returned to Celine. "Tell me, Miss Vale, how does someone with your obvious capabilities end up answering phones and filing paperwork?" "The same way someone with your reputation ends up at charity fundraisers," Celine replied smoothly. "Sometimes the most effective position is the one nobody's watching." Another smile from Lucien, sharper this time. "I like you," he said. "We should talk sometime, without the crowds and champagne." "I doubt Mr. Vesper would approve." "Then perhaps without Mr. Vesper." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Lucien was offering recruitment, poaching, testing whether Celine's loyalty was transaction or something deeper. Dejin felt his jaw tighten. "Miss Vale's position is quite secure," he said quietly. "She's not available for outside consultation." "Everyone's available," Lucien countered. "It's just a question of price." "Not everything's for sale." Everything's for sale. Some people just haven't named their number yet. He smiled at Celine one more time, nodded to Dejin, then disappeared into the crowd like smoke dissolving. Celine watched him go, expression unreadable. That was a job offer, she said after a moment. I noticed. He's testing boundaries, seeing if I'm loyal or just employed. And which are you? She turned to face him directly. The ballroom noise faded into background static. Dejin found himself genuinely curious about her answer. I'm whatever keeps me alive longest, Celine said finally. Loyalty is a luxury. Employment is survival. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to him in years. Before Dejin could respond, Victor appeared at his elbow, face tight.
We have a problem, his security chief said quietly. Martinez is here with 8 people. They're armed despite venue protocols, and they're moving toward your position. Dejin's pulse didn't change, didn't spike. Training and experience kept his body language neutral even as his mind calculated exits and angles. How many of ours? He asked. 4 inside, 2 perimeter. If this goes loud, we're outgunned. Celine's hand touched Dejin's arm. Light, brief. Don't, she said quietly. Martinez wants you to react. He's staging theater. How do you know? Because if he wanted you dead, he wouldn't do it here with 500 witnesses. This is about image, about showing his people he doesn't fear you. If you leave or call security, you confirm his narrative. And if I stay? Then you prove you're not afraid of a man who needs 8 guards to feel dangerous. Dejin looked at her, really looked, trying to find the secretary who'd sat at that desk for 3 years staying invisible. She was gone. What remained was someone who understood power games at a level that made her either invaluable or catastrophically dangerous. All right, he said. We stay. Victor looked like he wanted to argue, didn't. Just adjusted his position slightly to keep Martinez's approaching group in peripheral vision. They arrived 30 seconds later. Carlos Martinez was early 50s, Mexican cartel money mixed with American real estate holdings, and absolutely furious about something that had probably happened months ago. He dressed like old wealth trying too hard. Designer everything, too much cologne, rings on 3 fingers that served as expensive brass knuckles. The 8 men behind him were muscle, professional, expensive. The kind who got paid to look intimidating and occasionally follow through. Vesper, Martinez said. Not a greeting. An accusation. Carlos? Enjoying the event? Enjoying watching you pretend you belong here. Martinez's eyes swept the ballroom. All these rich people, all this charity, but we both know what you really are. Successful? A criminal in nice clothes? Dejin smiled, cold, controlled. Careful, Carlos. That sounds like projection. Martinez's face darkened. His hands curled into fists. The muscle behind him tensed, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. Then Celine laughed, not loud, not mocking, just amused, like she'd heard something genuinely funny. Every eye turned toward her. I'm sorry, she said, still smiling. It's just the theater of it all. 2 powerful men measuring themselves in public while pretending they care about housing initiatives. It's very performative. Martinez stared at her like she'd grown additional heads. Who the hell are you? He demanded. Nobody important, just someone who spent 3 years watching men play these exact games over and over. The posturing, the threats, the dominance displays. She took a small sip of champagne. It's all so predictable. You should teach your woman to respect her betters, Martinez snapped at Dejin. She's not my woman. She's my colleague, and she doesn't need teaching. Then she needs a muzzle. Mr. Martinez. Celine's voice cut through his rising anger like ice water. You came here tonight hoping Dejin would react to your presence, hoping he'd leave, or escalate, or give you something to use against him. But he's not going to, because unlike you, he doesn't need 8 armed men to feel secure at a charity gala. The ballroom had gone quiet. Not completely, but enough that nearby conversations had stopped. People were listening now, watching. Martinez realized it too. His face went red. Careful, he said quietly, voice shaking with barely controlled rage. You don't know who you're talking to. I know exactly who I'm talking to. A man who's losing territory to younger crews, who's hemorrhaging loyalty because his reputation exceeds his results.
Who came here desperate to prove he's still relevant? She smiled. How am I doing? For a moment, Dejin thought Martinez might actually swing at her. Then the moment passed. Martinez got control, locked it down. This isn't over, he told Dejin. It never is, Dejin replied. Martinez and his crew left. The conversations around them slowly rebuilt. Music continued. Waitstaff resumed circulating. Celine finished her champagne. That was stupid, Dejin said quietly. That was necessary. He needed to know you're not alone, that people beside you are paying attention. He'll retaliate. He'll try, but he just got humiliated in front of his own men. Whatever he does next will be rushed, emotional, sloppy. She was right. Dejin knew she was right. Martinez would lash out, and sloppy enemies made mistakes that could be exploited. But it also meant Celine had just painted a target on herself. In his world, that was often fatal. We're leaving, he said. The governor hasn't even spoken yet. Now. Something in his tone made her stop arguing. She set down her glass, nodded once, then walked beside him toward the exit. Victor fell in behind them, already coordinating with the perimeter team through a concealed earpiece. They made it to the lobby before the first camera flash went off. Then another. Then a dozen more. The photographers from earlier had multiplied. Questions came in rapid fire. Who was she? Where did she come from? What was their relationship? How long had they been together? Dejin kept moving, but he felt Celine hesitate for just a fraction of a second, felt her hand tighten slightly against his arm, felt her realize what he'd understood the moment she'd stepped out of that car. Visibility had consequences, and they were just beginning. Back. The ride back happened in silence. Celine stared out the window, watching the city slide past, while Dejin made quiet calls to his security team, adjusting protocols, adding protection details, locking down potential vulnerabilities. When they finally pulled up outside her apartment building, a mid-range complex in a neighborhood that was nice enough without being memorable, she didn't move immediately. Thank you, she said finally, for tonight. You exposed yourself to significant danger. I did my job. Your job is running an empire. Mine is protecting it from stupid mistakes. Martinez isn't a stupid mistake. He's a genuine threat. Then we'll handle him. She looked at Dejin directly. Unless you're planning to hide me again now that things got complicated. It was a fair question. The smart answer was yes. Pull her back. Make her invisible again. Keep her safe by keeping her unremarkable. But Dejin found himself saying something different. Monday morning, he said. My office. 8 o'clock. We need to discuss your new position. Her eyebrows rose slightly. New position? You're no longer my secretary. That ship sailed the moment those cameras started flashing. We'll figure out what you actually are tomorrow. For the first time all night, Celine looked genuinely surprised. Then she smiled, small, real. 8 o'clock, she confirmed. She got out of the car, walked toward her building, disappeared inside. Dejin watched until the lobby lights confirmed she'd made it safely, then told his driver to go. His phone buzzed. Message from Victor. Surveillance confirms 3 separate teams photographed her tonight. Images already circulating through underground networks. Everyone wants to know who she is. Dejin stared at the message, then typed back. So do I. Because somewhere between the ballroom and the car ride home, he'd realized the truth. For 3 years, Celine Vale had been invisible. Now she was the most visible thing in his entire world. And he had absolutely no idea what happened next. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray sky that made the city look like it was holding its breath. Dejin stood at his office windows watching traffic crawl through downtown streets while his mind ran scenarios he didn't like. The weekend had been quiet, too quiet. Martinez hadn't retaliated. The photographs from the Gala had spread through underground networks exactly as Victor predicted, but no direct threats had materialized. No moves against his operations. No attempts on Celine, just silence. And silence in his world usually meant someone was planning something worse. His door opened at exactly 8 o'clock. Celine entered carrying 2 coffee cups and a tablet tucked under her arm. She'd gone back to the unremarkable version. Glasses, gray blouse, dark slacks, hair pulled back severely. Like Friday night had been a costume she'd returned to whatever rental shop supplied transformations. Except her eyes were different now. Sharper. more direct. Like she'd stopped pretending invisibility was anything except strategy. "Morning," she said, setting one coffee on his desk. "Black, 2 sugars. You know how I take my coffee? I've been making your coffee for 3 years. I know everything about your routine down to which pen you prefer for signing contracts." She settled into the chair across from him. Not her usual corner, not standing, sitting like an equal waiting for a conversation instead of an employee awaiting instructions. Dejin studied her over the rim of his cup. "We need to talk about what happens next," he said. "Agreed, though I'd like to start with what's already happening." She pulled up her tablet, swiped through several screens, then turned it toward him. Photographs. Dozens of them. Every major news outlet and half the underground blogs had run stories about the gala. Most featured Celine, emerging from the car, standing beside him in the ballroom, confronting Martinez while looking like she could dismantle him with grammar alone. The headlines varied: "Mystery Woman Beside Crime King," "Vesper's New Partner," "Who is Celine Vale?" 6 different organizations have attempted background checks on me since Saturday, Celine said quietly. "My apartment buildings had surveillance teams watching the entrance. Someone tried bribing my landlord for information about my lease, and this morning I found a tracking device under my car." Dejin's jaw tightened. Victor's team removed it, then installed 3 of their own so they could monitor who's monitoring me. She took a sip of coffee. "Your security chief is thorough. I appreciate that." "This is exactly what I was trying to avoid." "No. What you were trying to avoid was dealing with complications. But I stopped being uncomplicated the moment you asked me to that gala." Her gaze didn't waver. "So now we adapt." "To what?" "To me being visible. To rivals knowing I exist. To the fact that everyone in this city now understands I'm more than furniture in your office." Dejin set down his cup, leaned back, tried reading her expression and found it frustratingly neutral. "What do you want, Celine?" "I want to know if you're going to protect me or hide me, because those are different strategies with different outcomes. Protecting you means keeping you alive. Hiding you means keeping you safe." "Hiding me means keeping you safe," she corrected, "because if I'm visible, I become leverage, and leverage makes you vulnerable." She was right. Again. It was becoming a pattern that Dejin found both useful and deeply annoying. "So what are you proposing?" he asked. "Make me official. Give me a real position with real authority. Chief Operating Officer, Strategic Director, whatever title signals I'm not just decoration." She leaned forward slightly. "Right now, I'm a mystery. Mysteries make people nervous. Nervous people do stupid things. But if I have a legitimate role, an explanation for existing beside you, then I become expected instead of threatening." "You think a title will stop people from investigating you?" "No. But it'll give them a narrative that doesn't involve me being your mistress or your weakness. It makes me a business decision instead of an emotional vulnerability." Dejin almost smiled. Almost. "You've thought this through." "I've had 3 years to think everything through while everyone assumed I wasn't capable of complex thought." She sat back. "I built your empire from the shadows. Now let me help you protect it in the light." Before Dejin could respond, his office door opened without knocking. Victor Kane entered fast, face tight, phone already extended. "We have a problem," his security chief said. "Martinez hit one of our southern warehouses 90 minutes ago. 4 casualties. Merchandise gone. Buildings on fire." The coffee cup in Dejin's hand didn't move, didn't shake, but something cold and familiar settled into his chest. The part of him that had built an empire through calculated violence and absolute control. "Survivors?" he asked quietly. 2. Both critical. Paramedics are en route, but..." Victor's expression finished the sentence. Dejin stood. Celine stood with him. "You're staying here," Dejin told her. "Like hell I am. This isn't a boardroom negotiation. This is a crime scene with bodies and people who want more bodies. You're not..." "I'm not what? Capable of handling violence? I've been processing your kill orders and cleaning up messy terminations for 3 years. I know exactly what you do and how you do it." Her voice stayed level, deadly calm. "You asked me to step into the light. This is what the light looks like." Victor glanced between them, clearly uncomfortable being present for whatever power dynamic was currently collapsing. Daejin wanted to argue, wanted to lock her in the office until the situation resolved itself through traditional channels, meaning bodies and retribution and messages sent through blood. But Celine's expression told him argument was pointless. "Fine," he said, "but you stay in the car. You don't exit the vehicle. You don't engage. Understood?" Perfectly. She was lying. He knew she was lying. She knew he knew. They went anyway. The warehouse sat in an industrial zone where legitimate shipping operations mixed with less legitimate cargo transfers, and nobody asked questions as long as the right palms stayed greased. Black smoke poured from blown-out windows. Fire crews worked the blaze while police secured a perimeter that wouldn't hold once detectives started asking uncomfortable questions about what was stored inside. Victor's SUV pulled up 2 blocks away, close enough to see but far enough to avoid immediate attention. Daejin stared at the smoke rising against gray sky. 4 people dead. 4 people whose families would get quiet payments and whose deaths would never hit official records because that's how his world worked. Clean, surgical, invisible except to those who understood what to look for. "Martinez is sending a message," Victor said from the driver's seat. "He's saying what happened at the Gala doesn't scare him." "Then we send a clearer message," Daejin replied. "Sir, if we escalate now, we don't escalate. We erase." Daejin pulled out his phone, started typing. "I want everything on Martinez's operations, supply chains, distribution networks, political connections, every vulnerability he has, and I want it by tonight." "That's possible, because I pay you to make impossible things happen." Victor nodded once, then started coordinating through his earpiece with teams across the city. Celine sat in the back seat, tablet in her lap, fingers moving steadily across the screen. She hadn't said anything since they'd arrived, just watched, processed, calculated whatever equations ran through her head. "You're quiet," Daejin said without turning around.
"I'm working." She didn't look up. "Martinez hit your weakest facility, the one with minimal security and maximum inventory. That suggests he had inside information about your operations." Meaning someone gave him that information, someone with access to logistics data and security protocols. Her fingers paused. "Someone inside your organization." The temperature in the SUV seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You're suggesting I have a traitor," Daejin said quietly. "I'm suggesting that Martinez didn't pick this warehouse randomly. He knew what was there, when guards would be rotating, and exactly where to hit for maximum damage with minimum resistance." She finally looked up. "Either he got very lucky, or someone handed him the blueprint." Victor's jaw clenched. "My team is vetted. Every person gets background checks, and—" "Background checks tell you who someone was," Celine interrupted, "not who they've become since you hired them. People change. Loyalties shift. Everyone has a price." "Not everyone," Daejin said. "Everyone." She met his eyes. "It's just a question of what currency they're accepting. Money, power, fear, revenge. But everybody breaks eventually, if you find the right pressure point." It was the most cynical thing Daejin had heard from her, also probably the most honest. His phone buzzed. Message from his operations director. 2 confirmed dead, 2 critical won't make it. Merchandise loss estimated $4 million. Facility total loss. $4 million in product. Gone. Plus the warehouse itself. Plus the message it sent to every rival watching. That Daejin Vesper could be hit. Could bleed. Could lose. In his world, perception was everything. And right now the perception was weakness. "We're going back," Daejin said. "Victor, I want full personnel audits completed by tomorrow morning. Financial records, communication logs, everything. If someone's dirty, I want to know who and how deep." "And when we find them," Victor asked, "then we make sure everyone else remembers why betrayal is fatal." The drive back happened in tense silence. Daejin made calls. Victor coordinated security sweeps. Celine kept working on her tablet, expression focused and unreadable. They were 3 blocks from the tower when Victor's phone exploded with incoming alerts. "Shit," his security chief breathed. "What?" "Martinez just released a statement through his media contacts." Victor pulled up his phone, face going pale. "He's claiming you ordered the warehouse hit yourself. Insurance fraud. Says he has evidence you're bleeding money and needed the payout." Daejin felt his hands curl into fist. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because even if nobody believed it,
The accusation alone would trigger investigations. Insurance companies would freeze claims. Police would start asking questions. Politicians who'd been quietly cooperative would suddenly need distance to avoid contamination. Martinez had just weaponized legitimacy against him. That's a lie, Victor said. Everyone knows it's a lie. Doesn't matter if it's true, Celine said quietly. Matters if it's believable. And Daejin burning his own facility to collect insurance? That's exactly the kind of thing people expect from criminal empires. So what do we do? Victor demanded. Celine looked at Daejin. Something shifted in her expression, something that looked almost like respect. We get ahead of it, she said. We don't deny. We don't defend. We attack. Explain, Daejin said. Martinez made a mistake. He's claiming you need money, which implies financial weakness. So we prove strength. She pulled up files on her tablet. You have 3 major contract negotiations pending. Sign them publicly. Today. Make it clear you're expanding, not contracting. Meanwhile, we leak documentation showing Martinez's operations are under federal investigation. Are they? They will be once I make a few anonymous calls to the right agencies with the right information. Daejin studied her. This woman who'd been filing his paperwork and organizing his calendar for 3 years, who apparently spent her invisible time learning exactly how to destroy people through legitimate channels. Do it, he said. Shut. By Tuesday afternoon, the narrative had shifted. Celine worked through back channels Daejin didn't even know existed, financial reporters who owed favors, bloggers who specialized in corporate corruption, anonymous tips to federal agencies about money laundering operations. She moved information like a chess master moving pieces, each placement designed to create pressure from unexpected angles. Martinez's insurance fraud accusation got buried under questions about his own finances. The contracts Daejin signed made headlines. 3 major infrastructure deals worth over $200 million combined, all announced within hours of each other. By evening news cycles, the story had changed completely. Now Martinez looked desperate. Daejin looked stronger than ever. But it had cost. Daejin stood in his office reviewing the damage while Celine sat across from him looking exhausted. She'd removed her glasses an hour ago and hadn't put them back. Her eyes were bloodshot from screen time and stress. We burned a lot of resources today, Daejin said quietly. We bought breathing room. That's worth the cost. Martinez won't stop. No, but now he's fighting on multiple fronts instead of just one. That divides his attention, creates opportunities for mistakes. She was right. Again. Always right lately. Daejin realized he was relying on her judgment more than his own instincts. That should have concerned him. Instead, it just felt necessary. You should go home, he said. Get sleep. We'll pick this up tomorrow. Can't. She rubbed her eyes. I have another call scheduled with that financial reporter. He's got questions about Celine. She stopped, looked at him. Go home, Daejin said again, gentler this time. For a moment she looked like she might argue. Then she just nodded, gathered her things, and stood. Victor's team is outside, Daejin added. They'll follow you home. Stay inside your building tonight. Don't go anywhere alone. You're worried about me. It wasn't a question, but Daejin answered anyway. Yes. Something complicated crossed her face. Not quite a smile, more like recognition of something she'd been suspecting but hadn't confirmed until now. I'll be careful, she said. Then she left. Daejin watched her go, then turned back to the windows. The city sprawled below, lights beginning to glow as dusk settled in. Somewhere out there, Martinez was planning his next move. Somewhere out there, a traitor was feeding information to enemies. Somewhere out there, things were spinning toward violence that would leave bodies in streets. And Celine was in the middle of it now, visible, vulnerable, valuable. His phone buzzed. Message from Victor. Personnel audit complete. Found 3 suspicious patterns. Sending details now. The details arrived 30 seconds later. 3 employees with unexplained deposits in their accounts. 3 employees who'd all accessed logistics systems the day before the warehouse hit. Daejin read through the files, then made the calls that would end 3 lives before morning. Wednesday started with rain that turned the city into wet concrete and gray reflections. Dejin arrived at the office early to find Celine already there, coffee made, files organized, looking like she'd been working for hours. "You're here early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." She handed him coffee. "Also, we have a problem." "Another one?" "Different kind." She pulled up her tablet. "Lucian Mercer requested a meeting. Today. Says it's urgent." Dejin felt his jaw tighten. "What does he want?" "He didn't say. Just that he has information relevant to your current situation with Martinez. It's a trap. Probably. But it might also be an opportunity." Celine leaned against her desk. "Mercer's smart. He wouldn't reach out unless he had something worth trading. And right now, we need every advantage we can get. You want me to meet with him?" "I want us to meet with him. Together." She met his eyes. "You made me visible. Now let's use that. Let Mercer see we're a unit, that he can't divide us or exploit cracks that don't exist." Dejin wanted to argue, wanted to keep her separated from players like Lucian who'd see her value and try buying it, but she was right. Again, showing unity projected strength, and strength was currency. "Set it up," he said. "Neutral location, public. Nothing that gives him tactical advantage. Already arranged. Café Moreau at 2 o'clock. Public space. Multiple exits. Your security can cover angles." She'd planned it before even asking his permission. Dejin should have been annoyed. Instead, he was impressed. Café Moreau occupied the ground floor of a historic building downtown, all exposed brick and industrial lighting, popular with business professionals who wanted to pretend they weren't negotiating hostile takeovers over overpriced espresso. Lucian Mercer sat at a corner table when they arrived, looking relaxed and dangerous in equal measure. He stood as they approached, smile perfect and meaningless. "Dejin, Miss Vale, thank you for meeting on short notice." They sat. Dejin positioned himself with clear sightlines to exits. Celine positioned herself with clear sightlines to Lucian. "You said you had information," Dejin said without preamble. "I do. But first, I want to clarify something." Lucian's attention shifted to Celine. "Miss Vale, I meant what I said at the gala. My offer stands. You're wasted managing schedules when you could be shaping strategy." "I appreciate the flattery," Celine said coolly, "but I'm not interested in changing employers. Even knowing that Martinez has a contract out on you?" The cafe noise seemed to fade. Dejin's hand stilled on his coffee cup. "Explain," he said quietly. Lucien pulled out his phone, swiped through screens, then turned it toward them. Encrypted message chains, photographs, transfer confirmations. "Martinez put 50,000 on Miss Vale's head yesterday," Lucian said. "Payment on confirmation of termination. The contract's been circulated through 3 different networks. Professional hitters, people who don't miss." Celine's expression didn't change, but Dejin saw her fingers curl slightly against her tablet. "Why are you telling us this?" Dejin asked. "Because Martinez is sloppy, angry, making emotional decisions that'll get him killed." Lucian sat back. "But before that happens, a lot of collateral damage will occur, including Miss Vale, unless you handle this correctly." "And you're volunteering to help out of kindness?" "I'm volunteering because I don't want Martinez's stupidity destabilizing the entire region. Bad for business. Bad for everyone." "What do you want in return?" "Nothing immediately. Consider this information a gesture of goodwill." Lucian's smile sharpened. "Though I expect we'll find opportunities for mutual benefit down the road." It was a transaction. Everything was always a transaction. Dejin looked at Celine. She was reading through the message chains on Lucian's phone, face calm but eyes moving fast. "These contracts went out 12 hours ago," she said, "which means hitters are already moving. Surveillance, planning, looking for vulnerabilities." "Your apartment building has minimal security," Lucian added. "Your commute follows predictable patterns. You eat lunch at the same cafe 3 times a week. Someone motivated and professional could exploit any of those routines." "So what are you suggesting?" Dejin asked. "Lock her down. Completely. Private security. Controlled location. No public exposure until Martinez is handled." Lucian paused. "Or let me handle it for you. My people can eliminate the contracts and the contractor. Clean, permanent, before the situation escalates." It was tempting, Dangerously tempting, but accepting help from Lucien meant owing him. And debts in their world had a way of compounding until they consumed everything. We'll handle it internally, Dejin said. You're sure? Because Martinez isn't playing games anymore. He wants blood, and Miss Vale is the easiest target. I'm not easy, Celine said quietly. Both men looked at her. She met their stares with calm that felt almost unnatural given the context. I'm careful, she continued. I'm prepared, and I'm not planning to make it simple for anyone trying to collect bounties. She stood. Thank you for the information, Mr. Mercer. We'll take it under advisement. Lucien studied her for a long moment, then smiled, genuine appreciation breaking through calculated composure. You're remarkable, he said. Truly, if you change your mind about employment opportunities, I won't. But if you do, you have my number. They left. Victor's team had been positioned around the cafe perimeter, and they fell into formation as Dejin and Celine walked toward the car. Nobody spoke until they were inside with doors locked and the vehicle moving. He's right, Dejin said finally. Your apartment isn't secure enough. You need to relocate. To where? My building, guest suite, top floor. Victor's team can maintain 24-hour coverage. Celine turned to look at him. You want me living in your building? I want you alive. Location is negotiable as long as it meets security requirements. And if people see me coming and going from your residence, the rumors that'll create? Better rumors than obituaries. She didn't respond immediately, just watched rain streak the windows while something complicated worked through her expression. All right, she said finally. But I'm keeping my apartment. This is temporary until we resolve the Martinez situation. Agreed. It was a lie. They both knew it was a lie. Because once Celine moved into his building, once she became that integrated into his protected space, extracting her again would be nearly impossible. But neither of them acknowledged it. By Thursday evening, Celine had relocated. 2 suitcases, a laptop, a small box of personal items she didn't unpack. The guest suite on Dejin's floor was larger than her entire apartment. Full kitchen, separate bedroom, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She stood at those windows now, coffee in hand, watching night settle over downtown. Dejin found her there after finishing calls with his operations team. 3 contract hits had been attempted on her in the last 24 hours. Victor's people had intercepted all 3. Bodies had been disposed of. Messages had been sent. But more would come. You should eat something, Dejin said from the doorway. Not hungry. You need to maintain strength. I need to figure out how to stop being someone's target. She turned to face him. This is my fault. If I'd stayed invisible, you'd still be in danger, just from different angles. Dejin moved into the room. Martinez would have found another excuse eventually. At least now you have protection. Your protection. Which makes me dependent. Which makes me weak. Accepting help isn't weakness. In your world it is. Dependency creates leverage. Leverage gets exploited. She set down her coffee. You taught me that. 3 years of watching you operate. Every relationship is transactional. Every connection has a price. Nobody gets close without becoming a vulnerability. Is that what you think you are? A vulnerability? Aren't I? The question hung between them. Dejin knew the correct answer, the strategic answer, the answer that maintained proper boundaries and prevented emotional complications. He said something different. Yes, you are. Celine's eyes widened slightly. You're a vulnerability, Dejin continued, because I care whether you live or die. Because I rely on your judgment more than anyone else's. Because somewhere in the last week you stopped being an employee and became something I don't have language for. He moved closer. And that terrifies me more than Martinez or contracts or any physical threat. Because I built this empire on not caring, on being untouchable, on never giving anyone leverage through emotional attachment. Then why are you telling me this? Because you asked, and because you deserve honesty after everything you've risked. Silence stretched. Rain hit the windows. The city glowed below them. I could use this against you, Celine said quietly. Everything you just admitted. I could weaponize it. I know. I could sell it to Lucien, to Martinez, to anyone willing to pay. I know. So why tell me? Dejin met her eyes. Because I'm choosing to trust you. Completely. Despite every instinct warning me it's stupid. Something shifted in her expression. Cracked. The controlled composure she wore like armor developed fissures. I can't promise I won't hurt you, she said. I can't promise I'm worth this risk. I'm just as broken as you are. Just as damaged. Just as terrified of... He kissed her. It wasn't planned. Wasn't calculated. Wasn't strategic. It was just human. Two people who'd spent years building walls finally letting them collapse. When they separated, Celine looked shaken, raw, more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. This is a mistake, she whispered. Probably. It'll compromise everything. Definitely. We should stop. We should. Neither of them moved. Dejin's phone shattered the moment, harsh buzz that meant something urgent and probably violent. He checked the message. Victor. Martinez just hit your shipping hub. Major casualties. He's escalating. The reality crashed back. The world they actually lived in. The empire that required constant defense. Celine saw his expression change. What happened? War. Dejin pocketed his phone. Martinez isn't playing anymore. He wants blood. Then we give it to him. You need to stay here, protected, while you what? Fight battles I helped create? She shook her head. No, we're in this together now. You just said I'm not just an employee anymore, so stop treating me like someone who needs protecting and start treating me like someone capable of protecting herself. Celine, I've been invisible for 3 years. Listening, learning, mapping every criminal operation in this city, while everyone dismissed me as furniture. Her voice hardened. I know where Martinez keeps his money, where he hides his product, who he trusts, and who's planning to betray him. I know everything because nobody thought I was worth watching. And you're planning what exactly? I'm planning to help you destroy him completely. Not just defeat him, not just push him back, erase him. Her eyes burned with something dangerous. You want to win this war? Then let me fight. Dejin stared at her. This woman who'd transformed from invisible secretary to lethal strategist, who kissed him one moment and declared war the next. She was right. She'd always been right. All right, he said, we fight together. Good. Then here's what we do. She moved to the dining table, pulled up her tablet, started laying out a plan that was absolutely brilliant and completely ruthless. Dejin listened, absorbed, modified, added his own pieces. Together they built something that would either save his empire or destroy it completely. And somewhere in the back of his mind, past strategy and survival and calculated violence, one thought kept circling. He'd spent his entire life believing emotional attachment was weakness. But watching Celine orchestrate destruction with terrifying intelligence, he realized something more dangerous. Maybe attachment wasn't the weakness. Maybe it was the weapon. Boss. Friday morning arrived with news that changed everything. Dejin was reviewing final preparations when Victor entered his office, face pale, holding a tablet like it contained something radioactive. We have a problem, his security chief said. A big one. Bigger than Martinez trying to kill us? Different. Victor set the tablet down. One of Martinez's lieutenants just reached out through back channels. He wants to defect. Says he has information about who's feeding Martinez intelligence from inside your organization. Dejin felt ice settle in his chest. The traitor. Yeah, but there's a condition. Of course there is. He'll only meet with Miss Vale, alone. Says he doesn't trust you or anyone on your security team, but he's been watching her. Thinks she's different. Thinks she'll deal fairly. Absolutely not, Dejin said immediately. It's an obvious trap. Maybe, but if he's telling the truth, he's not. Dejin. Celine's voice came from the doorway. She stood there in dark slacks and a fitted jacket, looking professional and dangerous and completely calm despite the context. You're not seriously considering this, Dejin said. I'm considering that we need to know who the traitor is. And this might be our only chance. It's suicide. It's calculated risk, which is different. She moved into the room. If this lieutenant is legitimate, he can give us everything we need to eliminate the leak and cripple Martinez's intelligence network. If he's not, then we learn something about their strategy anyway. By getting you killed, by forcing them to show their hand. She looked at Victor. Where's the meeting? Public park, noon. He specified the North Pavilion near the lake. Open ground, multiple sight lines, easy for security to cover from distance. Celine turned to Dejin. I'll wear a wire. Victor's team can position perimeter. At the first sign of trouble, they extract me. And if they can't? If it's a coordinated hit designed to draw out security so Martinez can, then you'll have bigger problems than my survival. Her voice stayed level. But I don't think this is a trap. Martinez is losing. His empire's fracturing. People are abandoning him. This lieutenant reaching out? That's desperation from someone who knows the ship's sinking. Dejin wanted to argue, wanted to lock her in the suite and handle this through different channels. But her logic was sound. And time was running out. Fine, he said, but if Victor's team stays close, and I'm watching the entire thing through surveillance feeds. Agreed. The park looked peaceful in late morning sun. Families walked paths. Joggers circled the lake. Normal people doing normal things, completely unaware that in a few hours their peaceful space would become a battlefield. Celine sat on a bench near the North Pavilion, tablet in her lap, looking like someone working remotely on a nice day. The wire hidden under her jacket fed audio directly to Victor's command van 2 blocks away. Dejin listened through an earpiece, watching surveillance feeds on multiple screens. I have visual, Victor said quietly. Subject approaching from the east path. Male, early 30s, alone. The man matched the description Martinez's lieutenant had provided. Nervous, constantly checking surroundings. Hands in pockets like he was holding something. Weapon or nerves, impossible to tell from distance. He reached the pavilion, sat down 3 feet from Celine. Miss Vale, he said quietly. You have information, she replied. Not a question. Statement of purpose. I have everything. Names, dates, communication methods. But I need assurances first. I can't offer immunity, but I can offer better treatment than you'll get from Martinez when he finds out you're talking to us. The lieutenant swallowed hard. It's not about immunity. It's about protection. Martinez will kill my family if he finds out I betrayed him. We can relocate them, new identities, financial support. But you need to give me something first, proof you're legitimate. The man pulled out his phone, opened an encrypted file, showed Celine the screen. Through the surveillance feed, Dejin couldn't see details, but he watched Celine's expression change, saw her jaw tighten. This is accurate? She asked quietly. Every word. The trader's been feeding Martinez intelligence for 6 months. Everything from shipping schedules to security rotations to... He stopped, looked past Celine, stood up fast. Get down! He shouted. 3 things happened simultaneously. The lieutenant dove toward Celine, pulling her off the bench. Gunfire erupted from the tree line. Victor's team opened return fire from concealed positions. Dejin's vision went white with rage and fear in equal measure. Extract her, he shouted into comms. Now! Working on it. Victor's voice crackled back. We've got 4 shooters, maybe more. The feed cut to static. Dejin was out of the van before conscious thought caught up. Victor's second-in-command tried stopping him. Dejin broke the man's grip and ran toward the pavilion. The park had erupted into chaos. Civilians screaming, running, security teams exchanging fire with hidden shooters, and somewhere in the middle of it, Celine. He found her 30 seconds later, behind a stone wall, lieutenant covering her with his body, blood spreading across his shoulder from a gunshot wound. You're hit, Celine was saying, hands pressed against the wound. Stay down. Help's coming. The lieutenant's eyes found Dejin, widened. It's her, he gasped. The traitor. It's... Another shot rang out. The lieutenant's head snapped back. Blood sprayed across stone. He collapsed without sound. Celine stared at the body, then looked up at Dejin. He was trying to tell me who... Later. Dejin grabbed her arm, pulled her up, started moving toward the extraction point where Victor's team had established temporary cover. They made it 20 feet before the real trap sprung. 6 men materialized from positions they'd held perfectly concealed. Professional. Coordinated. Moving with the kind of precision that meant military training. Victor's voice exploded through comms. Secondary team. They had a... The transmission died. Dejin counted angles, calculated odds, came up empty. They were surrounded. And Celine had just become exactly what he'd feared most. Leverage. The 6 men closed in with the kind of calm that came from knowing they'd already won. Dejin's hand moved toward the weapon concealed at his back, but the lead operative, scarred face, dead eyes, professional killer written in every controlled movement, just smiled and shook his head slowly. "Don't," the man said, voice flat, American accent, ex-military, probably special forces before whatever moral line he'd crossed led him here. "Your security chief is currently bleeding out 200 yards from here. His team's scattered, and you're surrounded by people who get paid extremely well to make problems disappear." Celine stood perfectly still beside Dejin, face pale, but expression controlled. Her hand found his wrist, squeezed once. A warning or goodbye, he couldn't tell. "Martinez sent you," Dejin said. "Martinez hired us. There's a difference." The operative gestured with his rifle. Phones, weapons, earpieces, on the ground, slowly. Dejin calculated angles one more time. 6 professionals. Clear firing lines. Civilians still screaming and running in the distance, which meant police response would arrive within minutes. That created time pressure that might force mistakes, or might just accelerate execution. He pulled out his phone with 2 fingers, set it on the ground. Did the same with his backup weapon and the small knife he kept strapped to his ankle. The operative's eyes shifted to Celine. "You too, Miss Vale." She removed her phone. The wire transmitter. Set them both down carefully. "Smart," the operative said. Then he shot Dejin. Not fatally. The round caught him high in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. Pain exploded white-hot and absolute. Dejin hit the ground hard, breath gone, vision tunneling. Celine screamed. The sound cut through everything, genuine terror mixed with rage. She dropped beside him, hands pressing against the wound. "Why?" she shouted at the operative. "He's unarmed. He's—" Making a point, the man stepped closer. "Martinez wants him alive, wants him suffering, but he wanted to make sure Mr. Vesper understands cooperation isn't optional anymore." Dejin tried breathing, tried focusing past the pain currently shredding his nervous system. Blood spread hot and fast under Celine's fingers. "We need to move," one of the other operatives said. "Police response in 3 minutes." "Then let's go." The lead operative gestured toward the tree line. "Bring them both." 2 men grabbed Dejin, hauled him upright. The movement sent fresh agony through his shoulder. He bit down on a scream that wanted to escape. Celine didn't fight when they grabbed her, just kept her eyes on Dejin, expression shifting between fear and something else, something calculating behind the panic. They were moved fast through trees, down a maintenance path civilians never used, toward a white van with tinted windows and stolen plates. The doors opened. Dejin was thrown inside, hit the metal floor hard enough to make his vision go gray. Celine was pushed in after him. Doors slammed, engine started. The van lurched into motion. Inside the cargo area was bare metal and darkness. One of the operatives sat watching them, rifle across his knees, face expressionless. Celine crawled to Dejin. Her hands found the wound again, applying pressure that made him gasp. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Just stay conscious." "Where are they taking us?" "Somewhere Martinez controls." Her voice stayed low, barely audible over road noise. "Somewhere he can do whatever he wants without witnesses." The operative watching them smiled. "Smart girl. Martinez has a facility outside the city. Very private, very secure, perfect for extended conversations." "Torture," Celine said flatly. "Information extraction. But call it whatever helps you sleep tonight." The smile widened. "Assuming you survive that long." Dejin's mind raced through scenarios. All of them ended badly. His security team was compromised. Victor might be dead. Even if backup came, they had no idea where this van was headed. They were alone. Completely. The van drove for 20 minutes. City noise faded into highway sounds, then into nothing. Rural roads, isolated territory. Finally, they stopped. Doors opened. Daylight flooded in, making Dejin squint against sudden brightness. They were pulled out into a gravel lot surrounded by forest. An old warehouse stood nearby, the kind that had been abandoned for years before getting quietly repurposed for activities that required privacy and soundproofing. Martinez stood waiting near the entrance. He looked different from the polished man at the Gala. This version wore casual clothes spattered with something dark that might have been oil or blood. His hands were wrapped in gauze. His eyes burned with the kind of fury that had been building for days. "Dejin Vesper," Martinez said, "welcome to the last place you'll ever see." "Creative," Dejin managed. "Speaking hurt. Everything hurt. Very dramatic. You think this is theater?" Martinez moved closer. "You think I'm performing?" His hand lashed out, striking Dejin across the face, hard enough to split his lip. Celine lunged, got 2 feet before operatives grabbed her, held her back. "Let him go!" she shouted. "Whatever this is about, he's not—" "Not what? Not a criminal? Not a murderer?" Martinez laughed, sharp, ugly. "Your boss has killed more people than most wars, Miss Vale. He's just been better at hiding it than me." "Then why am I here?" Celine demanded. "I'm not part of his operations. I'm just the woman he cares about." Martinez's smile turned vicious. "Which makes you perfect leverage. Because Dejin Vesper has built an entire empire on not caring about anyone, on being untouchable, on never giving enemies something they can use against him." He gestured toward Celine. "And then you walked into that ballroom looking like you mattered, looking like he might actually feel something human for once in his worthless life." Dejin tried speaking. Blood filled his mouth. "So here's what happens now," Martinez continued. "I'm going to hurt you, slowly, thoroughly, while Miss Vale watches. And every time you scream, she'll understand exactly what loving someone like you costs. Every time you beg, she'll realize she gave her heart to a monster who spent 20 years destroying families like mine." "Families like yours?" Celine's voice cut through Martinez's speech. "You run cartels, you traffic people. You've killed hundreds. I've killed criminals." Martinez rounded on her. "People who understood the rules, who knew the risks. But Dejin?" He spat the name. "Dejin kills anyone inconvenient, wives, children, anyone who might testify or talk or just knows too much." "That's not—" Celine started. "5 years ago," Martinez interrupted. "Dejin had my brother killed. Felipe Martinez. He worked logistics for a shipping company. Legitimate work, legal. But he saw something at the docks, saw containers being moved that didn't match manifests. So Dejin had him murdered, made it look like a robbery, left his wife a widow and his kids fatherless." Silence filled the gravel lot. Dejin felt something cold settle beneath the pain, because that name, Felipe Martinez, was familiar, a loose end from years ago, a witness who'd seen too much. He'd given the order himself. "You're lying," Celine said, but her voice wavered. "Am I?" Martinez pulled out his phone, pulled up files, shoved the screen toward Celine. "Here's the police report. Here's the autopsy. Here's the internal memo from Dejin's organization authorizing the hit." Celine stared at the screen. Her face went pale. "Felipe wasn't involved in anything illegal," Martinez continued. "He was just a dock worker in the wrong place, and your boss had him executed like he was nothing. Like his life meant nothing, like his family meant nothing." "Dejin?" Celine's voice was barely a whisper. "Tell me this isn't true." Dejin met her eyes. Wanted to lie. Wanted to explain that in his world, loose ends were fatal. That witnesses created liability. That 5 years ago he'd been building something that required absolute security and couldn't afford complications. But he just promised her honesty. "It's true," he said. Something died in her expression. "He saw too much," Dejin continued, voice rough. "He could have destroyed everything I was building. It was a strategic decision." "Strategic?" Celine's voice broke. "You murdered someone's brother, someone's husband, someone's father, and you're calling it strategic? In my world, your world is built on bodies." Her voice rose, cracking with fury or grief or both. "You told me everyone was replaceable, that loyalty was temporary, that trust was just currency. But I didn't realize you meant everyone, even innocent people just trying to survive." "There are no innocent people," Dejin said. "Not in the life I live. Everyone's a threat or a tool or a liability waiting to explode." "And which am I?" The question hung between them. Martinez watched with savage satisfaction. "You're different," Dejin said finally. "Different how? Different enough to protect? Or just different enough to use until I become inconvenient like Felipe Martinez?" "That's not—" Answer the question, Celine shouted. If I saw something I shouldn't, if I became a liability, would you have me killed too? Dejin wanted to say no, wanted to promise protection, but they both knew what his world required. His silence was answer enough. Celine turned away. Her shoulders shook once, then went rigid with control.
Good, Martinez said quietly. Now you understand what he is, what he's always been. He gestured to his men. Take him inside, start with the fingers. I want him screaming before we move to anything permanent. They grabbed Dejin, started dragging him toward the warehouse. Wait! Celine's voice cut through movement. Wait! I have information you want. Martinez held up a hand. His men stopped. What information? He asked. Intelligence about Dejin's operations. Financial records. Security protocols. Everything you'd need to dismantle his empire completely. Her voice stayed level, controlled. But I want guarantees first. Celine, don't, Dejin started. Shut up. She didn't look at him, kept her attention on Martinez. You want revenge? Real revenge? Killing him is quick, merciful, but destroying everything he's built? Watching his empire collapse? That's the pain that lasts. Martinez studied her carefully. You'd betray him? After everything? After everything I just learned? Yes. Her jaw tightened. He's a monster. You were right, and I've spent 3 years enabling him without understanding the full cost. What guarantees do you want? My safety, relocation, new identity, and $50 million. Dejin felt his chest constrict, not from the gunshot wound, from something worse, because Celine was negotiating her price. Martinez laughed. 50 million? That's ambitious. That's what I'm worth. I know everything. Security codes, financial structures, political connections, where he keeps backup assets, who's loyal and who's vulnerable to pressure. She finally looked at Dejin. Her eyes were cold, dead. I know how to destroy him completely. Question is whether you're willing to pay for that knowledge. And if I refuse, then you torture him for information he won't give you, kill him eventually, and his empire continues running because his people don't need him anymore. They need the systems he built, systems I helped create and maintain. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and completely devastating. Martinez considered for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 30 million, he said. Half now. Half when Vesper's empire is confirmed destroyed. 40. And I want the first payment in cryptocurrency before I give you anything. 35. Final offer. Celine pretended to think, then nodded. Agreed. But we do this properly. Written contract. Legal protections. I'm not trusting verbal promises from men who make their living through violence. Smart. Martinez gestured toward the warehouse. Let's go inside. We'll draft terms. They started moving. Dejin was dragged along, mind reeling. This couldn't be real. Couldn't be happening. Celine wouldn't betray him. Wouldn't sell everything for money. Except she absolutely would. Because he'd just confirmed that in his world, everyone had a price. Everyone was replaceable. Everyone was ultimately alone. And she'd learned that lesson perfectly. Inside the warehouse was exactly what Dejin expected. Concrete floors, exposed beams, soundproofing on walls, drainage systems for blood. Tools hung on pegboards, a metal chair sat bolted to the floor. They threw him into it, secured his wrists with zip ties. His shoulders screamed protest. Martinez pulled out a laptop, started typing. I'm drafting the contract now. Miss Vale, I'll need your full legal name and Victoria Chen. Everyone froze. Dejin's head snapped up despite the pain. What? Celine, Victoria, whatever her real name was, looked at him with expression he couldn't read. My name is Victoria Chen, she said quietly. Not Celine Vale. That was an identity I created 3 years ago specifically to infiltrate your organization. The warehouse seemed to tilt sideways. You're lying, Dejin said. I'm not. Governor Chen is my uncle. Felipe Martinez's wife is my cousin. When Dejin had Felipe killed, my family wanted justice, but they couldn't get it through legal channels because Vesper owns too many judges and politicians. Her voice stayed perfectly calm, clinical. So I volunteered, created a fake identity, applied for the secretary position, spent 3 years invisible, learning everything, waiting for the right moment to bring him down. Martinez stared at her.
You're Governor Chen's niece? I am. You can verify through whatever channels you want. But while you're doing that, you should know I've been feeding information to federal agencies for 18 months. Everything Dejin does. Every crime, every murder, every financial crime. She smiled. It looked like winter. The only reason he's not in federal custody already is because I've been stalling prosecution until I could deliver him and Martinez simultaneously. What? Martinez's hand drifted toward his weapon. You think I came here unprepared? The moment your people grabbed us in the park, I triggered dead man switches. If I don't check in within the next hour, everything I've compiled on both your organizations gets released to law enforcement automatically. Victoria pulled out a phone from somewhere, backup device Martinez's men had missed. I have footage of this facility, audio of you admitting to kidnapping, evidence of murder conspiracy. You're finished, Martinez, unless you cooperate. You bitch! Cooperate how? Victoria's voice cut through his rising anger like ice. You want revenge on Dejin Vesper? I'm offering it gift-wrapped. You testify against him, provide evidence about his operations. In exchange, the federal charges against you get reduced. Minimal sentence. Protected custody. You might actually survive this. And him? Martinez gestured toward Dejin as life in federal prison. No parole. Everything he built confiscated under RICO statutes. His name becomes synonymous with criminal empire takedowns. Her eyes finally met Dejin's. Complete destruction, the kind that lasts forever. Dejin couldn't speak, couldn't process. 3 years. 3 years she'd been lying, playing a role, building trust while documenting everything that could destroy him. You planned this from the beginning, he finally managed. I did. The invisible secretary was perfect cover. You never looked at me, never questioned me, never suspected that the person managing your files was also copying them. That the woman organizing your calendar was also tracking your movements for federal surveillance. She moved closer. You taught me that everyone's a tool. Everyone has utility. So I used mine. I became exactly what you needed while building the case that'll end you. Why reveal it now? Because Martinez forced the timeline. His attack today would have killed you before federal prosecution could happen. I needed you alive for trial, needed you suffering through legal destruction rather than just dying. Her expression didn't change. This way is better. This way you lose everything while staying conscious enough to feel it. Martinez lowered his weapon. You're serious about the deal. Completely, but we need to move fast. Federal response is already en route. They'll be here in approximately 30 minutes. You cooperate now or you join Dejin in federal custody. And if I choose option 3, Martinez asked, kill you both, disappear before agents arrive. Then the evidence releases anyway, and you spend the rest of your life running from charges that include murdering a federal cooperating witness. Your choice. Silence stretched. Dejin watched Martinez calculate angles, weigh options, see the trap closing from every direction. Fine, Martinez said finally. What do you need? Victoria, not Celine, never Celine, started giving instructions, detailing what Martinez needed to provide, what testimony would satisfy federal prosecutors, how the deal would work. And through it all, she never looked at Dejin again. He sat there, blood drying on his shoulder, mind fracturing under revelations that kept compounding. Everything had been a lie, every moment, every conversation, every time she'd anticipated his needs or protected his interests or seemed to understand him, all performance, all calculation, 3 years of perfect deception. The woman he'd trusted more than anyone, the woman he'd started caring about despite every warning his instincts screamed. She was the weapon that would destroy him completely. Dejin Vesper. Victoria's voice finally addressed him directly. You said everyone was replaceable. That loyalty was temporary. That emotional attachment was weakness. She crouched in front of his chair, met his eyes with expression that held no warmth at all. You were right about everything, and I'm grateful you taught me those lessons so thoroughly. Why? The word came out broken. Why go this far? Why not just turn over evidence years ago? Because evidence without context gets dismissed by your lawyers. I needed complete documentation. Every crime connected to your personal orders, your voice on recordings, your signature on authorizations, airtight case that no amount of money or influence could compromise. She stood. And I needed you to trust me completely, to bring me inside, to make me visible at that gala so federal surveillance could start building conspiracy charges against everyone you associated with. The gala was set up. The gala was perfect. You exposed me to your entire network. Cameras caught every interaction. Audio surveillance documented every conversation. In one night, I connected you to 50 different criminal associates, all of it admissible, all of it devastating. Daejin felt something break inside his chest. Not physical, something deeper. Did any of it mean anything? He asked quietly. Any moment? Any conversation? Victoria's expression flickered, just for a second. Something almost human moved behind the ice. Then it was gone. No, she said. It was all performance, all strategy. You were a target, nothing more. She was lying. Daejin could see it, could feel it. Some part of the last 3 years had been real. Some part of Celine, if not Victoria, had existed beyond the cover identity. But it didn't matter, because real or not, she'd chosen destruction over whatever they'd started building. Sirens echoed in the distance. That's our cue, Victoria said. She looked at Martinez. Federal agents are 90 seconds out. You stay cooperative, you walk out of this alive, you fight, you die here. Simple math. Martinez's men shifted nervously, weapons lowered. They'd signed up for kidnapping and murder, not shootouts with federal law enforcement. Everyone stay calm, Martinez said. We're cooperating. Nobody moves unless agents give orders. The sirens grew louder. Victoria moved toward the warehouse entrance, stopped, looked back at Daejin one final time. For what it's worth, she said quietly, you were right about one thing. Emotional attachment is weakness. It compromises judgment, creates vulnerabilities that enemies exploit. Her voice dropped. I almost forgot that. Almost let myself believe we were building something real. But then you confirmed what you'd do if I became inconvenient, and that reminded me exactly who you are. Victoria. Special Agent Victoria Chen, she corrected. Federal Bureau of Investigation. And you're under arrest, Mr. Vesper, for murder, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy, and about 40 other charges that'll keep you in federal prison until you're too old to remember freedom. The doors burst open. Federal agents flooded in, tactical gear, weapons drawn, commands shouted. Daejin was pulled from the chair, read his rights, secured in handcuffs. Martinez surrendered without resistance. His men dropped weapons. Everyone assumed positions on the ground. Through the chaos, Daejin kept his eyes on Victoria. She stood beside the lead agent, giving directions, pointing out evidence locations, playing her role perfectly. Special Agent Victoria Chen. Not Celine Vale. Never Celine. The invisible secretary who'd spent 3 years learning how to destroy him had been federal law enforcement from the beginning. And he'd never suspected, never questioned, never looked closely enough to see the truth. They dragged him outside. Sunlight hit like accusation. News helicopters circled overhead. More vehicles arrived, straight. Federal prosecutors, evidence teams, media already picking up the story. Victoria emerged from the warehouse, face composed, badge visible on her belt. A reporter shouted questions. Special Agent Chen, can you confirm this is part of the Vesper investigation? No comment at this time, Victoria replied. Professional, cold. Official statements will be released through FBI Public Affairs. They loaded Daejin into an armored transport. Door slammed. Darkness. He sat there in silence while the vehicle started moving, carrying him toward federal detention and trials and the complete destruction of everything he'd spent 20 years building. And through it all, one thought kept circling. He taught Celine that everyone was replaceable, that loyalty was temporary, that emotional attachment was weakness. She'd learned perfectly, and used those exact lessons to destroy him completely. The woman he'd trusted most had been his enemy from the first day. And the worst part, the part that made his chest feel like it was caving in, was that somewhere between performance and reality, he'd started caring about her anyway. Which meant she was right. Emotional attachment was weakness. And he'd just learned that lesson in the most devastating way possible. Chag. Federal detention felt exactly like Daejin expected. Concrete walls, fluorescent lighting, the smell of industrial cleaning products failing to mask decades of human misery. They processed him through intake with bureaucratic efficiency. Fingerprints. Photographs.
Medical examination where they finally treated his shoulder wound. Then isolation. The cell was 10 by 8, concrete bed, metal toilet, small window showing nothing but gray sky. Daejin sat on the bed and stared at walls while his mind ran through everything that had happened, looking for mistakes, for moments where he should have suspected, for cracks in Victoria's performance. There were none. She'd been perfect, absolutely perfect. Every gesture calculated, every response measured. 3 years of flawless deception. The door opened. A federal prosecutor entered. Mid-40s, expensive suit, face that suggested he'd built a career on high-profile convictions. Mr. Vesper, I'm Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Reeves. I'll be prosecuting your case. Daejin didn't respond. Reeves sat down, opened a file folder thick enough to represent years of documentation. You're looking at life in federal prison, he said conversationally. Multiple RICO violations, continuing criminal enterprise, money laundering, wire fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit murder. And that's just the opening charges. We'll add more as investigation continues. I want my lawyer. Already arranged, Daniel Frost is en route from New York. Should arrive within the hour. Reeves smiled. Though I'll tell you now, this case is airtight. Special Agent Chen spent 3 years building documentation that your legal team won't be able to challenge. Every transaction traced, every order recorded, every crime connected directly to you. Is she here? Special Agent Chen. She's briefing prosecutors and preparing her testimony. Reeves leaned forward. Between us? She's the most thorough undercover operative I've worked with in 20 years. Every piece of evidence tagged and annotated, every recording time-stamped and verified. She even maintained redundant backups in case you discovered her cover and tried destroying files. How long was she FBI? 7 years before going undercover. Specialized in financial crimes and organized criminal enterprises. When her family approached us about building a case against you, she volunteered immediately. Spent 6 months creating the Celine Vale identity. Learned enough administrative skills to pass as a professional secretary. Then applied for your position and disappeared into her cover completely. 3 years, plus 6 months preparation, plus whatever training came before that. Victoria Chen had dedicated almost 4 years of her life to destroying him. She must really hate me, Daejin said quietly. Hate? Reeves considered. I don't think she hates you. I think she sees you as a cancer that needed removing. Professional, clinical, nothing personal. Except it had become personal. Daejin knew it, had seen it in her eyes during that conversation in his penthouse, felt it in the way she'd kissed him before everything collapsed. Some part of the performance had become real, which made the betrayal worse. There is one thing, Reeves said carefully, one possibility for reduced sentencing. I'm not testifying against anyone, not testifying, cooperation of a different kind. Reeves pulled out additional documents. Special Agent Chen has convinced her superiors that you possess intelligence about international criminal networks that could benefit ongoing investigations. If you provide that intelligence, the U.S. attorney might be willing to discuss reducing your sentence from life to 25 years. 25 years versus life. That's your offer. That's significantly better than dying in federal prison. You'd be 67 at release, still have life left. And what exactly would this cooperation require? Everything you know about criminal operations across North America and Europe. Names, financial structures, political connections, complete breakdown of the networks you've built and maintained. Reeves closed the folder. Essentially, you'd be doing exactly what Special Agent Chen did to you, except you'd be doing it to everyone else. Daejin almost laughed. The irony was perfect. Victoria had destroyed him through systematic documentation and betrayal. Now, they wanted him to do the same to everyone he'd ever worked with. I need to think about it, he said. Take your time. We're not in a rush. Reeves stood. Your lawyer will be here soon. I'd suggest listening to whatever he recommends, because right now, cooperation is your only path to anything except dying in a cell. He left. Silence returned. Daejin sat there, shoulder throbbing, mind cataloging names and networks and connections that could buy him reduced time. He could do it. Could give them everything. Could burn every bridge and destroy every alliance in exchange for 25 years instead of life. It would be smart, strategic, the kind of calculated decision his world rewarded. Except
except some stubborn part of him. The part that had started caring about Celine despite knowing better, refused to become what she'd accused him of being, a man who'd betray anyone to survive, a monster who valued self-preservation above everything. If he cooperated, he proved her right, proved that everyone was replaceable and loyalty meant nothing, and the only thing that mattered was individual survival. But if he didn't, he spent the rest of his life in federal prison while Victoria moved on with her career and her life, and whatever came after this case closed. The door opened again. Daejin expected his lawyer, expected more prosecutors, expected anything except what walked through. Victoria Chen stood there in professional clothes, FBI badge clipped to her belt, expression carefully neutral. "We need to talk," she said. Daejin stared at her. The woman who'd destroyed him. The woman who'd been Celine Vale for 3 years before revealing herself as his enemy. "I have nothing to say to you," he said quietly. "That's fine, you can just listen." She closed the door, remained standing. "The prosecutors want you to cooperate. They're offering reduced sentencing in exchange for testimony." "I know, Reeves already made the pitch." "And? And why do you care?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "Because I need to know whether you're going to be smart or stupid. Smart would be burning everyone I've ever worked with to buy myself a few extra years of freedom. Stupid would be protecting people who do the exact same thing to me in a heartbeat." Daejin met her eyes. "So which do you think I should choose, Special Agent Chen?" "I think you should choose survival." "Like you did?" Her expression flickered. "That's not fair." "Fair?" Daejin laughed, sharp, bitter. "You spent 3 years lying to me, building trust while documenting every crime, letting me believe you might actually care while planning my destruction. And you're talking about fair? I did my job. I infiltrated a criminal organization and brought down a dangerous man who's hurt countless people. Is that what you tell yourself? That it was just a job? That none of it was real?" Victoria didn't answer immediately. Her hands curled slightly at her sides. "It doesn't matter what was real," she said finally. "What matters is that you're in federal custody facing life in prison, and you have one chance to reduce that sentence. You'd be stupid not to take it." "Why do you care whether I take it or not?" "Because—" She stopped, exhaled slowly. "Because I don't want you dying in prison." The admission hung between them. "You destroyed my entire life," Daejin said quietly. "Took everything I built, everything I was, and now you're here telling me you don't want me dead? You'll forgive me if that sounds contradictory?" "It is contradictory. All of this is contradictory." Victoria moved closer. Her voice dropped. "I spent 3 years hating you, building a case brick by brick, documenting every terrible thing you'd done. And it was easy because I believed you were exactly what my family said. A monster, a killer, someone who deserved complete destruction. And then? And then somewhere in the last few months, I started seeing past the crimes. Started seeing the person underneath. The man who was capable of honesty when it hurt him, who protected people he cared about even when it was strategically stupid, who looked at me like I actually mattered instead of just being useful." Her voice cracked slightly. "And I started wondering if maybe my family was wrong. If maybe you were more complicated than just monster or victim, but not complicated enough to stop what you'd started. No, because Felipe Martinez is still dead. His children still grew up without a father, and all the other people you've heard over 20 years still deserve justice." She met his eyes. "But that doesn't mean I enjoyed destroying you. Doesn't mean I don't wish things could have been different." "Then why are you really here, Victoria?" She flinched at the name, like hearing it from him hurt. "I'm here to convince you to cooperate," she said. "To give prosecutors what they want. To make this as painless as possible. For me or for you? For both of us. Because if you refuse to cooperate, I have to testify against you. I have to stand in front of a courtroom and detail every crime you committed. Every murder. Every betrayal. Everything I documented while pretending to care about you." Her voice shook. "And I don't know if I can do that without breaking." Understanding hit Daejin like a second gunshot. She wasn't here for him. She was here because testifying would destroy her too. Because sitting across from him in court while reciting years of documented crimes would force her to face exactly what their relationship had cost both of them. You want me to cooperate so you don't have to testify, he said. I want you to cooperate because it's the smart choice, because it reduces your sentence and makes this easier on everyone. But yes, part of me hopes you agree because I don't think I can sit in that courtroom and do what I'd have to do. And what's that? Pretend that nothing between us mattered, that it was all just performance, that I felt nothing while you told me things you've never told anyone else. Tears gathered in her eyes, didn't fall, just sat there making everything worse. I can lie to prosecutors, to my superiors, to everyone else, but I can't lie to myself about this. And I can't lie under oath while looking at you. Dejin stood slowly. The movement hurt. Everything hurt. He moved toward her, stopped a foot away. You want to know the truth? He said quietly. The real truth? Yes. I'd rather die in federal prison than give prosecutors what they want. Not because I'm protecting criminal networks, not because I care about people who'd betray me in seconds, but because cooperating means becoming exactly what you accused me of being. And I'd rather suffer than prove you right. Victoria stared at him. That's insane. That's human. Which is ironic coming from someone you called a monster. You are a monster. You've done monstrous things. But that doesn't mean... She stopped, shook her head. You're going to throw away your only chance at reduced sentencing out of pride? Not pride, principle. There's a difference. There's really not. Then you don't understand me as well as you thought. They stood there facing each other. Two people who'd spent 3 years building something that was both completely real and entirely false, whose connection had been simultaneously the deepest honesty and the most devastating lie. I can't save you from this, Victoria said finally. If you refuse to cooperate, you'll get life without parole, you'll die in federal prison, and I won't be able to stop it. I know, and you're choosing that anyway. I am. Why? Dejin met her eyes, saw the conflict there, the war between duty and whatever feelings she'd developed despite herself. Because you taught me something important, he said. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that caring about someone makes you human instead of just surviving, and that the worst thing I ever did wasn't killing Felipe Martinez or running criminal operations. It was building a life where I never allowed myself to feel anything real. Dejin, these last few months with you, even knowing it was performance, were the most human I've felt in 20 years, and I'm not going to destroy that by reverting to the monster who'd betray everyone to save himself. He smiled. It felt sad. So thank you for teaching me something I didn't know I needed to learn. Victoria's tears finally fell. You're an idiot, she whispered. Probably. And you're going to ruin your life over a principle that won't matter in 10 years. Maybe. But it matters now. She looked at him for a long moment, then moved forward, closed the distance between them, and kissed him. It was desperate and sad and tasted like salt from tears neither of them could stop. When they separated, Victoria's face was wet. I'm sorry, she said. For all of it. For lying. For destroying you. For not being strong enough to stop what I started. I'm sorry too. For Felipe. For everyone I've hurt. For not learning these lessons earlier when they might have mattered. She nodded once, then turned and walked to the door, stopped, looked back. For what it's worth, she said quietly, Celine was real. Maybe not her name or her history, but the woman who cared about you, who wanted to believe you could be better. She was real. Then she left, and Dejin was alone again, sitting in a cell facing life in federal prison while the woman who'd destroyed him walked free. It should have felt like defeat. Instead, it just felt like finally understanding what being human actually cost. Daniel Frost arrived 3 hours after Victoria left. Dejin's lawyer was everything expensive legal representation promised. Tailored suit, Harvard credentials, reputation built on getting powerful men acquitted of crimes everyone knew they'd committed. He entered the cell carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent and an expression suggesting he'd already calculated victory percentages. Mr. Vesper, Frost extended his hand. Dejin shook it. I've reviewed the preliminary charges. This is significant, but manageable with proper strategy. The FBI has 3 years of documented evidence, audio recordings, financial records, Direct testimony from an undercover agent embedded in my organization. Dejin leaned back against concrete wall. Tell me how that's manageable. Because evidence needs context. Recordings can be selective. Financial records require interpretation. And undercover testimony is always vulnerable to questions about bias and personal involvement. Frost opened his briefcase, pulled out files. Special Agent Chen spent 3 years in deep cover. 3 years building a relationship with you. That creates opportunities we can exploit. Exploit how? By questioning her objectivity, by suggesting her feelings compromised her judgment, by painting her testimony as revenge motivated by rejected romantic attachment rather than professional investigation. Frost smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Juries love narratives about scorned women making false accusations. Dejin felt his jaw tighten. That's disgusting. That's effective legal strategy. Agent Chen opened herself to this vulnerability the moment she allowed personal feelings to develop. We'd be foolish not to use it. No. Frost paused. Excuse me? We're not using that strategy. We're not attacking Victoria's credibility through her feelings. We're not turning this into a trial about scorned romance. Mr. Vesper, with all respect, you're facing life in federal prison. Every available defense strategy needs consideration. Not that one. Dejin's voice went cold. Find another approach, or I'll find another lawyer. Frost studied him with expressions suggesting he'd just watched a drowning man refuse a life preserver. You understand this significantly limits our options. I understand. But some things matter more than winning. Like what? Chivalry? Frost's tone dripped skepticism. The woman you're protecting orchestrated your complete destruction. She lied to you for 3 years, built a federal case brick by brick while pretending to care about you, and you're refusing to defend yourself because you don't want to hurt her feelings? I'm refusing to defend myself by becoming exactly what she accused me of being. There's a difference. Not one that'll matter when you're serving life without parole. Dejin didn't respond, just watched his expensive lawyer realize that logic and strategy wouldn't change his mind. All right, Frost said finally. Then we need different ammunition. The prosecutors offered cooperation in exchange for reduced sentencing. Have you considered? No. You haven't even heard the terms. I don't need to. I'm not testifying against anyone. I'm not providing intelligence about criminal networks. I'm not cooperating. Frost closed his briefcase with controlled force. Then what exactly do you expect me to do? The evidence against you is overwhelming. Without cooperation or aggressive defense strategies, we have no leverage, no negotiating position, nothing that prevents life in federal prison. Then get creative, find legal technicalities, challenge evidence collection methods, file motions about proper procedure. Dejin met his lawyer's eyes. But do it within the boundaries I've set. No attacking Victoria's credibility, no cooperation with federal prosecutors. Those are non-negotiable. You're tying both hands behind my back. I'm giving you boundaries that let me live with myself after this is over. Work within them or leave. Frost stood, adjusted his suit jacket. His expression suggested he was calculating whether Dejin's retainer was worth the professional frustration of representing a client determined to lose. I'll review the case files, he said finally. Look for procedural vulnerabilities. But I'm telling you now, without cooperation or aggressive defense, your chances of avoiding life in prison are minimal at best. Understood. Frost left. The cell door locked behind him with sound like finality accepting its own inevitability. Dejin sat there in silence, shoulders still throbbing despite pain medication, mind running through everything that had brought him to this concrete box. 20 years building an empire. 3 years having it documented by someone he'd trusted completely. 1 week watching everything collapse. And now? Now he was choosing principle over survival. Choosing to protect the woman who'd destroyed him rather than weaponizing their relationship for legal advantage. His father would have called it weakness. Martinez would have called it stupidity. Victoria would probably call it too little too late. But Dejin called it the first honest decision he'd made in 2 decades. Katz. The preliminary hearing happened 4 days later. They transported Dejin to federal courthouse in armored vehicle, hands cuffed, orange jumpsuit replacing the suits he'd worn while building his kingdom. Media lined the streets. Cameras tracked every movement. Reporters shouted questions that went unanswered. Inside, the courtroom was modern and cold. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights. American flag hanging beside the judge's bench. Federal prosecutors sat at one table looking confident. Frost sat at the defense table looking expensive and pessimistic. Dajan was led to his seat. The bailiff removed his handcuffs. He sat. And directly across the gallery, 3 rows back, Victoria Chen watched with expression he couldn't read. She wore professional clothes, FBI badge visible, hair pulled back severely, the version of her that was pure federal agent without any trace of Celine veil remaining. Their eyes met, held. Then the bailiff called court to session, and everyone stood as Judge Patricia Morrison entered. She was mid-60s, reputation for being fair but ruthless, someone who'd sentenced white-collar criminals and drug dealers with equal efficiency. "Please be seated," she said. "We're here for preliminary hearing in United States versus Dajan Vesper. Will counsel state their appearances for the record?" The prosecutors introduced themselves. Frost did the same. Judge Morrison reviewed documents briefly. "The charges here are extensive: RICO violations, continuing criminal enterprise, money laundering, multiple conspiracy counts. Mr. Reeves, are the people ready to proceed?" "We are, Your Honor. The United States has assembled comprehensive evidence spanning 3 years of undercover investigation. We're prepared to demonstrate probable cause on all charges." "Mr. Frost?" "The defense is ready, Your Honor. Though we have significant concerns about the methods used to obtain evidence and the relationship between investigating agent and my client. You can raise those concerns during proper motions. Today we're simply establishing whether probable cause exists to bind this matter over for trial." Judge Morrison looked toward prosecutors. "Call your first witness." "The United States calls Special Agent Victoria Chen." Victoria stood, moved forward, took the stand, was sworn in. Dajan watched her settle into the witness chair with controlled composure. No nervousness, no hesitation, just professional law enforcement preparing to testify against a target. Reeves approached the stand. "Special Agent Chen, can you describe your role in this investigation?" "I served as undercover operative embedded in Dajan Vesper's organization for 3 years. My assignment was documenting criminal activity and gathering evidence for federal prosecution." "And during those 3 years, what position did you hold in Mr. Vesper's organization?" "Personal secretary. I managed his schedule, maintained files, and coordinated operational logistics." "Which gave you access to what kind of information?" "Everything. Financial records, communication logs, meeting notes, security protocols. I had administrative access to every system and database in the organization." Reeves pulled up documents on a screen. "Can you identify these files?" Victoria reviewed them briefly. "Those are financial records showing money laundering through shell corporations. I documented and copied them over 18 months. "And these audio files?" "Recordings of Mr. Vesper ordering criminal activities, contract murders, bribery, witness intimidation. I recorded approximately 300 hours of conversations during my assignment." Reeves walked her through evidence methodically, each piece damning, each one documented with timestamps and annotations and context that made defense nearly impossible. Frost objected occasionally, got overruled mostly. The evidence was what it was. Finally, Reeves asked the question Dajan had been waiting for. "Special Agent Chen, during your undercover assignment, did you develop personal feelings for the defendant?" The courtroom went quiet. Victoria's hands curled slightly against the witness stand. "I maintained professional boundaries throughout the investigation." "That's not what I asked. Did you develop personal feelings?" "Objection," Frost said. "Relevance?" "Your Honor, the defense has indicated they plan to question Agent Chen's objectivity. I'm establishing baseline now." Judge Morrison considered. "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Agent Chen." Victoria took a breath, met Reeves' eyes instead of looking at Dajan. "Yes," she said quietly. "In the final months of my assignment, I developed feelings that compromised my objectivity." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Judge Morrison's gavel silenced them. "And how did you address that compromise?" Reeves continued. "I reported it to my supervising agent. We implemented additional oversight. All evidence I collected was verified by secondary sources to ensure personal feelings didn't affect documentation accuracy." "So despite personal feelings, the evidence remained reliable?" "Yes. Every piece was cross-checked and validated independently." Reeves smiled. "Thank you." No further questions. Frost stood for cross-examination. He approached the stand carefully. Special Agent Chen, you said you developed feelings for my client. Can you describe those feelings? Victoria's jaw tightened. I began caring about him beyond my professional role. Caring how? Romantically? Objection, Reeves said. Agent Chen's personal life isn't relevant to evidence validity. It's relevant to bias, Your Honor, Frost countered. I'll allow limited exploration, Judge Morrison said, but stay focused, Mr. Frost. Frost nodded. Agent Chen, were you romantically involved with my client? Briefly, in the final days before his arrest. And during that involvement, did you disclose your true identity? No. So you maintained your deception even while engaged in romantic relationship? Yes. That must have been difficult, lying to someone you claimed to care about. Victoria's expression stayed controlled, but Dejin saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers pressed against wood. It was necessary, she said. Necessary for the investigation, or necessary because you couldn't reconcile your feelings with your duty. Both. Frost moved closer. Agent Chen, when you testified that you cared about my client, were those feelings real, or were they part of your undercover performance? The question hung in air like blade waiting to fall. Victoria looked directly at Dejin for the first time since taking the stand. Her eyes held something complicated, something that looked like it hurt. They were real, she said quietly, which made everything harder. Harder to maintain your cover? Harder to destroy someone I'd started to understand. Her voice stayed level, professional, but something raw lived underneath. Dejin Vesper is responsible for terrible crimes. People died because of his orders. Families were destroyed. Justice demanded prosecution. But that doesn't mean I enjoyed being the instrument of his destruction. Yet you did it anyway. Yes. Because duty required it. Because the law demanded it. Because the people he hurt deserve justice more than I deserve to avoid emotional pain. Frost studied her. No further questions. Judge Morrison looked at both counsel. Anything else? The United States rests, Your Honor, Reeves said. Defense? Frost shook his head. Not at this time. Then based on evidence presented, this court finds probable cause exists on all charges. Defendant is bound over for trial. Bail hearing is set for tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Judge Morrison's gavel struck. We're adjourned. Everyone stood. The bailiff moved to secure Dejin's handcuffs again, but before they could transport him out, Victoria approached the defense table. I need to speak with him, she told the bailiff. Privately. 2 minutes. The bailiff glanced at prosecutors. Reeves nodded permission. They were left alone at the table. Guards standing close enough to intervene, but far enough to give illusion of privacy. That was brutal, Dejin said quietly. It was necessary. Victoria's voice was barely audible. But you should know something. After I testified, Reeves told me the prosecutors are preparing enhanced charges, additional RICO counts. They're going to add everything they can to ensure life without parole. I expected that. And you're still refusing to cooperate? Yes. Victoria's hands curled into fists against the table. You're going to throw your entire life away, spend decades in federal prison, die there without ever seeing freedom again. And for what? Principle? Pride? For being something other than what you accused me of being. I never accused you of being suicidal. No. You accused me of being someone who'd betray anyone to survive, someone who valued himself above everything else, someone incapable of caring about anything except power and control. Dejin met her eyes. And you were right. For 20 years, that's exactly who I was. But these last few months showed me something different. Showed me that being human means sometimes choosing pain over preservation. That's insane. That's growth, which is ironic coming from someone who spent 3 years trying to destroy me. Victoria looked like she wanted to argue, wanted to shake him until he made the rational choice. Instead, she just exhaled slowly. There's something else, she said. Something I found in the evidence files that wasn't included in prosecution materials. What? She glanced around, made sure no one was listening too closely, lowered her voice further. Martinez, the cooperation deal prosecutors offered him? He's not honoring it. My contacts at DEA say he's still running operations from protective custody. still coordinating with people outside, and he's planning something. Planning what? I don't know. But whatever it is involves you, involves making sure you never make it to trial. Understanding hit Dae-jin cold and fast. He wants me dead before I can testify. You're not testifying. You refused cooperation. He doesn't know that. All he knows is that I have information that could destroy what's left of his organization, and as long as I'm alive, I'm a threat. Victoria nodded. Federal detention is supposed to be secure. But Martinez has money and connections. If he wants you dead badly enough, he'll find a way. Dae-jin felt something shift in his chest. Not fear exactly. More like recognition that the game had changed again. When? I don't know. Could be days, could be weeks, but it's coming. Why are you telling me this? Because... Victoria stopped. Her voice cracked slightly. Because, despite everything, I don't want you dead. I want you in prison paying for crimes you committed. But I want you alive. The bailiff approached. Time's up. We need to transport the prisoner. Victoria stepped back. Her eyes held Dae-jin's for one more second. Then he was being led away. Handcuffed. Surrounded by guards. Taken through corridors and checkpoints back toward the armored transport. But his mind was already working through new calculations. Martinez wanted him dead. Victoria had warned him. And somewhere in the margins between those facts, an opportunity existed. He just had to survive long enough to find it. Federal detention operated on rigid schedule. Meals at set times. Recreation in controlled blocks. Lights out precisely at 10. Dae-jin used the structure to map vulnerabilities. The guards rotated shifts every 8 hours. 3 worked the corridor where high-value prisoners were housed. 1 monitored security feeds. 1 conducted rounds every 30 minutes. If Martinez had corrupted someone, it would be one of those 5. Dae-jin watched, waited, cataloged behaviors. The guard who avoided eye contact during evening rounds, suspicious. The one who spent too much time checking his phone during shifts, possible. The overnight supervisor who'd worked at the facility 18 years without incident, unlikely, but couldn't be eliminated. 3 days passed without incident. On the 4th day, everything changed. Dae-jin was in recreation yard, Shag. Concrete enclosure surrounded by 30-foot walls, sky visible through razor wire. A dozen other prisoners moved through space with careful awareness of boundaries and hierarchies. He was running perimeter when another inmate approached. Young, Latino, prison tattoos suggesting cartel affiliation. Someone who'd learned violence early and never found reasons to stop. Vesper, the kid said. Not hostile, just stating fact. Dae-jin stopped running. Yeah, got a message for you, from friends outside. I don't have friends outside. The kid smiled. No warmth, just teeth. Sure you do. They say hello. They say they're watching. They say accidents happen in places like this. Martinez sent you. I don't know names. I just deliver messages. The kid stepped closer. His hand moved toward his waistband where something was concealed. They also sent a gift, something to help you sleep better. Dae-jin's training kicked in. 20 years of surviving dangerous situations created instincts that didn't require conscious thought. He moved, fast. Inside the kid's reach before the concealed weapon cleared his waistband. Elbow strike to the throat, knee to the groin. The kid went down gasping. Alarms erupted. Guards swarmed the yard. Dae-jin was slammed against concrete, hands secured, knees driven into his back. Don't move! Don't fucking move! He didn't, just stayed pressed to ground while they searched the kid. Found a shank. Prison-made knife fashioned from sharpened metal and wrapped handle. Lethal if used correctly. They dragged both of them inside, separated them. Threw Dae-jin into isolation cell. The warden arrived 30 minutes later. Thick file folder. Expression suggesting he'd seen this exact situation too many times. You want to explain what happened in the yard? He asked. Kid tried stabbing me. I defended myself. Uh-huh. And you just happened to notice the weapon before he used it? I spent 20 years surviving in environments where people want me dead. You develop instincts. The warden flipped through papers. The other inmate claims you attacked him without provocation. Says he was just talking when you assaulted him. He's lying, but you already know that. What I know is that violence in my facility creates problems. Problems I don't appreciate. The warden leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're staying in isolation for 72 hours while we investigate. During that time, you're going to think very carefully about whether protective custody might be a better option than general population. Protective custody means solitary confinement for months. Protective custody means staying alive until trial. Your choice. The warden left. Dejan sat in the isolation cell, smaller than his regular space, concrete walls, no window, just fluorescent light that never turned off. Martinez's message had been clear. Dajin wasn't safe anywhere. Not in recreation, not in his cell, not under federal protection. Someone inside the facility was compromised, maybe multiple someones. And unless Dajin found a way to neutralize the threat, he'd be dead before trial ever started. His mind worked through options. All of them required help, resources, access to people who could move pieces outside the detention facility, which meant he needed to contact the one person who might actually care whether he lived or died. Getting a message to Victoria required creativity. Dajin's lawyer visited the next morning. Frost entered the isolation cell looking irritated at having been summoned on short notice. "You have 15 minutes, the guard said. Use them wisely." The door locked. They were alone. "What's so urgent it couldn't wait for our scheduled meeting?" Frost asked. "I need you to contact Victoria Chen. Tell her Martinez is making moves inside this facility. Tell her I need protection, or I won't survive until trial." Frost's expression shifted. "You're asking your victim to protect you?" "I'm asking a federal agent to ensure a high-value prisoner survives to testify if he chooses to." "But you're not planning to testify." "She doesn't know that, and right now prosecutors still think I might cooperate if pressured correctly, which means keeping me alive serves their interests." Frost considered. "This is irregular, but I suppose approaching Agent Chen with security concerns falls within my duties. Anything else?" "Yeah, file motions challenging my detention conditions. Cruel and unusual, inadequate protection. Whatever legal pressure might force facility administration to improve security. That'll take days to process." "Then work fast, because I don't have days." Frost left. The guard returned. Dajin was escorted back to isolation, and he waited. 12 hours later, Victoria arrived. She entered the cell alone, badge visible, expression controlled but eyes showing concern that she couldn't quite hide. "You asked for me," she said. "Martinez is making moves. Prison assault yesterday was just the opening. He's got someone inside this facility. Maybe multiple people. And he's planning to have me killed before trial." Victoria's jaw tightened. "You have proof?" "Kid in recreation yard delivered a threat. Tried stabbing me with a shank that he got from somewhere. Guards didn't find it during processing, which means someone's not checking thoroughly or someone's actively helping smuggle weapons inside. I'll alert facility administration. They're either incompetent or compromised. Either way, working through official channels won't stop what's coming." Dajin met her eyes. "I need you to investigate. Find out who Martinez has corrupted. Cut off his access before he gets another opportunity. And if I can't, if the corruption goes deeper than 1 or 2 guards, then you transfer me to a different facility, somewhere Martinez doesn't have reach." Victoria moved closer. Her voice dropped. "That requires federal prosecutor authorization. Reeves won't approve transfer without reason. And if I tell him Martinez is targeting you, his next question will be why you're not cooperating in exchange for protection. So lie. I'm a federal agent. I don't lie to prosecutors." "You lied to me for 3 years." The words hung between them. Victoria flinched like she'd been hit. "That was different," she said quietly. "What?" "That was undercover work. Authorized deception for investigative purposes." "Semantics. Point is, you're capable of lying when it serves a purpose. And right now, keeping me alive serves justice. Because if Martinez kills me, he walks. His cooperation deal becomes worthless once I'm dead. He goes free while the man you spent 3 years hunting never faces trial." Victoria's hands curled into fists. "You're manipulating me." "I'm giving you a choice. Let me die here and Martinez wins. Or protect me long enough for trial and justice actually happens." She turned away. Pressed palms against concrete wall. Her shoulders rose and fell with controlled breathing. "I hate you," she said. "I know. You're still a criminal, still guilty of everything I documented. You deserve prison. I know that too. But you don't deserve to be murdered before facing legitimate prosecution. No, I don't. Victoria turned back. Something had shifted in her expression, resolved itself into decision. I'll investigate, she said. Find out who Martinez has inside this facility. But if I do this, you need to give me something in return. Like what? Information, not cooperation with prosecutors. Just information that helps me understand what I'm dealing with. Martinez has resources I didn't know about, connections that survived his arrest. I need to know who he's working with if I'm going to stop him. And if I give you that information, you'll use it to build more cases against more people. Yes, but those people are trying to kill you, so maybe for once our interests align. Dejin considered. It wasn't cooperation. Not technically, just information exchange that happened to serve mutual benefit. The kind of transaction his old self would have made without hesitation. All right, he said. Martinez has 3 primary contacts outside prison. Vincent Riordan runs his financial operations. Elena Vasquez handles West Coast distribution, and Marcus Tang manages political connections in the capital. He rattled off details, locations, communication methods, operational structures. Everything Victoria would need to disrupt Martinez's outside network. She recorded it on her phone. When he finished, she looked up. This is enough to target all 3 with federal charges. I know. You just gave me everything I need to dismantle Martinez's remaining organization. I did. Because as much as I hate cooperating, I hate dying in a prison cell more. Dejin moved closer. And because some part of me still trusts you despite everything that's happened. Victoria's expression cracked slightly. You shouldn't. Probably not. But here we are anyway. She started to respond. Stopped when her phone buzzed with incoming message. She checked it. Her face went pale. What? Dejin asked. My supervisor. Martinez escaped custody 20 minutes ago during transport to court hearing. 3 guards dead. He's in the wind. The cell seemed to contract. Air got thinner. He's coming here, Dejin said. No, he'd never risk direct assault on federal facility. Too many cameras, too much security. Then he's planning something worse. Victoria's phone buzzed again. This time she actually answered, listened for 15 seconds, went white. Understood. I'm on site now, implementing emergency protocols. She ended the call. Looked at Dejin with expression that confirmed every fear currently tearing through his mind. What? He demanded. Bomb threat. Someone called claiming explosives are planted throughout this facility. FBI is responding, but the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, red glow replacing fluorescent white. Then the explosion hit. Not close, maybe 2 floors down, but loud enough to shake concrete, to send dust cascading from ceiling, to trigger every alarm in the building simultaneously. Victoria grabbed Dejin's arm. We need to move, now! I'm a prisoner. I can't just... Martinez's threat wasn't about bombs. It was about creating chaos, disrupting security, giving him access during evacuation. She pulled him toward the door. If you stay here, you die. So move. The isolation cell door was supposed to be locked, but it swung open when Victoria pushed. Someone had overridden security. Someone inside the facility. They ran. The corridor was chaos. Guards shouting, prisoners being evacuated, smoke pouring from lower levels. More explosions echoing through concrete. Victoria had her weapon drawn. She moved through the confusion with trained precision, pulling Dejin behind her. Where are we going? He shouted over alarms. Roof access! FBI helicopters inbound for emergency extraction. They hit the stairwell, started climbing. 3 floors, 5, 7. Behind them, footsteps echoed. Multiple people, moving fast. Victoria looked back, cursed. They're following us. Who? Don't know. Don't care. Just move faster. They reached the roof access door. Victoria kicked it open. Wind and rain hit immediately. Storm had rolled in while they were inside, turning the rooftop into slick concrete and zero visibility. Helicopter searchlights cut through the darkness overhead. Descending. 30 seconds from landing, Dejin ran toward it, made it 10 feet before gunfire erupted behind them. Victoria returned fire, 3 shots, professional, controlled. Someone screamed, went down, but more shapes emerged from the stairwell. 4, 5.
Armed and organized, Martinez's people. Had to be. Moving with coordination that meant training and planning. The helicopter touched down. Side door opened. FBI tactical agents beckoned frantically. Go, Victoria shouted at Dae-jin. Get on the helicopter. Not without you. I'll cover! Move! More gunfire. Victoria dropped behind a ventilation unit, returning shots that forced their attackers into cover. Dae-jin ran for the helicopter, reached it. Strong hands grabbed him, pulled him inside. He turned back. Victoria! She was still pinned, still trading fire. The tactical agents were laying down covering fire, but there were too many targets, too much chaos. Then one of Martinez's people got smart, flanked wide, came around the ventilation unit from the side. Victoria never saw him. The shot hit her high in the chest. She went down hard. Dae-jin screamed something, didn't know what, just sound and fury and helplessness. He tried jumping out of the helicopter. Tactical agents grabbed him, held him back. We have to get her, he shouted. We will, but we need to... Another explosion, bigger this time. The entire facility shuddered. The helicopter pilot's voice crackled through comms. We need to go. Building's unstable. Not without Agent Chen. Sir, if that building collapses... Two tactical agents ran across the roof, grabbed Victoria, dragged her back while laying suppressing fire. They threw her into the helicopter, blood everywhere, so much blood. The helicopter lifted immediately, rising fast, tilting away from the facility. Below, the detention center's roof collapsed inward, flames and smoke pouring skyward. Dae-jin pressed his hands against Victoria's chest wound. Blood pulsed hot between his fingers. Stay with me, he said. Don't you fucking die. Not like this. Her eyes opened, unfocused, struggling. Dae-jin, save your energy. We're getting you help. You're going to be fine. He's coming. Who? Martinez? Everyone. Blood bubbled at her lips. Told everyone where you'd be. Understanding crashed over Dae-jin like ice water. The escape, the bomb threats, the roof assault. None of it was about killing him in the detention facility. It was about forcing his extraction, about getting him exactly where Martinez wanted him, in an FBI helicopter, with compromised tactical agents flying toward coordinates someone had predetermined. No, Dae-jin breathed. The pilot turned in his seat, drew a weapon, pointed it directly at Dae-jin's head. End of the line, Vesper, the pilot said. Not FBI, someone else. Someone bought and paid for by Martinez. You're going to land exactly where you were always supposed to. The helicopter banked hard, changed course, and Victoria's hand found Dae-jin's. Squeezed once, then went limp. Victoria's hand went limp in Dae-jin's grip. For 3 seconds, the world collapsed into that single point of contact. Her fingers, his palm, blood cooling between them, the kind of silence that lived inside moments right before everything changed permanently. Then training kicked in. Dae-jin released her hand, grabbed the nearest tactical agent's weapon, pulled it clean from the holster before the man could react. Spun, put the barrel against the pilot's temple. Land this helicopter, Dae-jin said, voice flat, dead calm. Right now, or your brain decorates the windshield. The pilot's hand tightened on his own weapon, still pointed at Dae-jin but suddenly less confident about firing. You shoot me, we crash, the pilot said. Everyone dies. Then everyone dies. Your choice. The two remaining tactical agents moved. One reached for his sidearm. The other went for the rifle secured near the door. Dae-jin shifted aim, shot the first agent through the shoulder. The crack was deafening in enclosed space. The man went down screaming. The second agent froze, hands visible, surrendering without words. Smart, Dae-jin said. Then back to the pilot. Land, now, or the next one goes through your skull. The pilot's jaw worked, calculations running behind his eyes, weighing money against mortality, loyalty against survival. He chose survival. The helicopter banked, started descending. Rain hammered the windshield. Below, industrial districts stretched in all directions, abandoned warehouses, empty lots, the kind of landscape where things happened without witnesses. They touched down hard on cracked asphalt, engines still running, rotors whipping rain into horizontal sheets. Dae-jin grabbed Victoria.
pulled her toward the door despite her dead weight. The uninjured tactical agent helped without being asked, maybe genuinely FBI, maybe just wanting to live through the next 5 minutes. They got her out, laid her on wet concrete. Medical kit, Daejin ordered. Now. The agent grabbed supplies, returned with trauma kit. Together they worked on Victoria's chest wound, packing it, applying pressure. Her breathing was shallow, irregular. Too much blood loss. She needs a hospital, the agent said. She needs to survive the next 10 minutes first. Daejin checked her pulse, weak but present. Checked her pupils, responsive but sluggish. She was dying, slowly, but dying. Behind them, the helicopter lifted off. The pilot apparently deciding that staying meant answering questions about why he'd pulled a weapon on his passenger. The engine noise faded. Silence returned except for rain and Victoria's labored breathing. The tactical agent was young, mid-20s, face pale with shock. What do we do? You call for real FBI support. Tell them Agent Victoria Chen is down. Give them these coordinates. Then you secure a perimeter until they arrive. And you? I'm staying with her. You're a federal prisoner. I should restrain Try it and I'll shoot you too. Daejin's tone didn't change, didn't heat, just stated fact. Your choice. Help save her life or die trying to do your job. Pick fast. The agent pulled out his phone, made the call. Daejin turned his attention back to Victoria. Her eyes had opened, staring up at rain falling from dark sky. Hey, he said quietly, stay with me. Her lips moved. No sound came out. Don't talk. Save energy. Help's coming. She tried anyway, whisper so faint he had to lean close to hear. Martinez. Forget Martinez. Focus on breathing. He planned everything. I know, but he failed. You're alive. I'm alive. That means we won. Blood bubbled at the corner of her mouth. She coughed. The movement made her scream. Don't move, Daejin said. Just breathe, in and out. That's all you need to do. Daejin. Her hand found his, gripped with surprising strength. I'm sorry? For what? Doing your job? Destroying my empire? Spending 3 years lying to me? He smiled. It felt broken. Nothing to apologize for. You were right about everything. Not everything. Yeah, everything. I was a monster. I killed innocent people. I built an empire on blood and called it strategy. He pressed harder against her wound. Blood kept seeping, too much. But you showed me something different. Showed me that being human was possible even after everything I'd done. You showed me, too. What? How to run a criminal organization efficiently? How to care, despite knowing better. Her eyes closed. Daejin's chest constricted. Victoria, look at me. Open your eyes. She didn't. Victoria! Her hand went slack in his. The tactical agent dropped beside them, checked her pulse. His expression answered before words could. She's gone, he said quietly. No. I'm sorry. She lost too much blood, even if paramedics were here. No. Daejin started chest compressions, counting, pushing, mechanically. She doesn't get to die, not like this. Not for me. Sir, help me or get out of the way. The agent hesitated, then positioned himself to assist. They worked together. Compressions, rescue breathing, everything they'd been trained to do in situations where death arrived uninvited. 1 minute, 2, 3. Victoria's body stayed limp, unresponsive, gone. Daejin kept working anyway, because stopping meant accepting. And accepting meant living with the knowledge that the woman who destroyed him had died trying to save him. Sirens echoed in the distance, getting closer. The tactical agent touched Daejin's shoulder. Sir, she's gone. You need to stop. Daejin's hand stilled, pressed against Victoria's sternum, feeling nothing beneath, no heartbeat, no breath, no life, just absence. He sat back. Rain soaked through his prison jumpsuit. Blood covered his hands. Victoria's blood, mixed with rain until pink water ran across cracked asphalt. The sirens arrived. FBI vehicles, ambulances, federal marshals, all the machinery of law enforcement responding to officer down. They surrounded Dejin, weapons drawn, shouting commands. He raised his hands, let them secure him, didn't resist when they pushed him to the ground, cuffed his wrists, read rights he'd already heard too many times. Paramedics descended on Victoria, worked frantically, trying procedures that Dejin knew wouldn't matter. She was gone, had been gone for minutes. But they had to try anyway because that's what training demanded. One of the paramedics looked up, made eye contact with the FBI supervisor, shook his head. The supervisor closed his eyes, nodded once. Someone pulled a sheet over Victoria's body, and Dejin felt something inside him that had been holding together through force of will finally shatter completely. They took him to different facility, maximum security federal prison 200 miles from the city, the kind of place that housed terrorists and cartel leaders and people who'd burned through every other option. The cell was concrete and steel, no windows. 23 hours lockdown, 1 hour daily recreation in a cage barely larger than his living space. Dejin didn't care. He spent the days staring at concrete ceiling, replaying everything, looking for moments where different choices might have changed outcomes. If he'd never asked Celine to the Gala, if he'd kept her invisible and safe, if he'd trusted her warning about Martinez sooner, if he'd accepted protective custody, if he'd stopped her from coming to that rooftop. 10,000 small decisions that added up to Victoria Chen dying on wet asphalt while trying to save a man who'd spent 20 years earning destruction. The guilt was physical, a weight that pressed against his chest, made breathing difficult, made sleeping impossible. His lawyer visited on the third day. Frost entered the cell carrying files and wearing expression that suggested he'd aged 5 years in a week. "The trial is postponed," he said without preamble. "Prosecution needs time to reorganize their case without Agent Chen's testimony." "How long?" 6 months, maybe more. Federal prosecutors are scrambling. Chen was their primary witness. Everything built around her documentation and credibility. Without her, Frost trailed off. "They're still proceeding, but it's complicated." "And Martinez? Still missing. FBI has nationwide manhunt, but he's disappeared completely. Probably left the country." Dejin absorbed that. Martinez was free. Victoria was dead, and the empire they'd both tried destroying was scattered in pieces across law enforcement databases. "There's something else," Frost said carefully. "Before Agent Chen died, she filed documents with the court, personal testimony, sealed until after her death." He pulled papers from his briefcase. "The judge released them yesterday. I thought you should see." He handed over the pages. Dejin read. It was Victoria's statement, written in clinical language but carrying weight that legal prose couldn't completely disguise. She detailed her investigation, the crimes she'd documented, the evidence she'd gathered, all professional, all expected. But then the tone shifted. "During the final months of my undercover assignment, I developed feelings for the subject that compromised my objectivity. I reported this to my supervising agent, who implemented additional oversight to ensure evidence integrity. However, I believe the court should understand the full context of my testimony. Dejin Vesper is guilty of crimes I documented. He ordered murders. He ran criminal operations. He hurt innocent people. Justice demands prosecution. But he is also capable of change. In our final conversations, he demonstrated genuine remorse. He refused to cooperate with federal prosecution not because he was protecting criminal networks, but because he was choosing principle over self-preservation. He rejected legal strategies that would have weaponized our relationship because he valued my dignity over his freedom. These facts don't absolve his crimes, but they suggest that the man I came to know in those final months was different from the monster I'd been investigating, that he was capable of growth and genuine human connection. I'm writing this because I won't survive to testify. I know Martinez is planning something. I know my investigation has made me a target, and I want the court to have complete context if I'm not there to provide it. Dejin Vesper deserves punishment for crimes committed, but he also deserves acknowledgement that people are capable of becoming something better than their worst actions. That justice and mercy aren't mutually exclusive. This is my final testimony. I hope it matters. The signature was Victoria's, dated 3 days before the detention center assault. Dejin read it twice, then set the pages down with hands that shook. "She knew," he said quietly. She knew Martinez would kill her, and she wrote this anyway. It appears so. Frost paused. The judge is considering the statement as part of sentencing evaluation. It won't eliminate charges, but it might influence final terms. I don't want leniency. Excuse me? I don't want the court using Victoria's death to reduce my sentence. She spent 3 years building a case against me. She died protecting the investigation. Using her final words to buy me mercy would dishonor everything she worked for. Frost stared at him. You're refusing to use exculpatory evidence? Evidence that could mean the difference between life in prison and release before you're elderly? I'm refusing to profit from her death. There's a difference. Not one that makes legal sense. Then I'm done making legal sense. Dejin stood. Tell the prosecution I'm ready to plead guilty. All charges, no deal, no negotiation. Whatever sentence they want, I'll accept. That's insane. With Chen's statement, we could argue for 20 years. Maybe less with good behavior. You'd have life after prison. I don't want life after prison. I want to pay for crimes I committed. Completely. Without Victoria's mercy reducing what I actually owe. Frost gathered his papers with expressions suggesting he was representing the most frustratingly principled client of his career. I'll relay your position to the court, he said, but I'm advising you this is a terrible decision. Noted. Frost left. Dejin sat alone in concrete silence, and for the first time in 20 years felt something like peace settle into the spaces where guilt and rage had been living. The plea hearing happened 2 months later. They transported Dejin to federal courthouse under heavy security. No media this time. No cameras. Just quiet legal proceeding where guilty men accepted consequences. The courtroom was the same. Judge Morrison presiding. Federal prosecutors at their table looking simultaneously satisfied and disappointed that they wouldn't get to try their case publicly. Dejin's plea was simple. Guilty. All charges. No conditions. No request for leniency. Judge Morrison reviewed documents with expressions suggesting she'd seen many things in 30 years on the bench, but principled guilty pleas from crime lords who refused to negotiate wasn't one of them. Mr. Vesper, she said, you understand that by pleading guilty without agreement, you're exposing yourself to maximum sentencing under federal guidelines? I understand, Your Honor. And you've been advised by counsel that alternative options exist? I have. Yet you're proceeding anyway. Yes. She studied him. Why? Because I'm guilty, Your Honor. I committed the crimes I'm charged with. People died because of my orders. Families were destroyed. And I spent 20 years calling it business. Dejin's voice stayed level. I don't deserve mercy. I deserve exactly what the law prescribes for people who do what I did. Even if that means life in federal prison? Especially if that means life in federal prison. Judge Morrison set down her papers. I've read Agent Chen's final statement. Her testimony suggests you demonstrated capacity for change, for genuine growth. The court takes that into consideration during sentencing. With respect, Your Honor, I'd prefer you didn't. Excuse me? Agent Chen died protecting her investigation. Using her final words to reduce my sentence dishonors her work. I'm asking the court to sentence me based on crimes committed, not on what one person believed I might become. Silence filled the courtroom. Judge Morrison's expression shifted. Something almost like respect moved behind judicial neutrality. That's an unusual request, she said. It's the right request. She considered for a long moment, then nodded once. Very well. The court accepts your guilty plea on all counts. Sentencing is set for 30 days from today. During that time, probation will prepare pre-sentencing report. You're remanded to federal custody until then. Her gavel struck. We're adjourned. They led Dejin out through back corridors. No crowd, no spectacle. Just quiet acceptance of consequences. In the transport vehicle, one of the marshals spoke. For what it's worth, he said, Agent Chen was good people. One of the best. What you did back there, refusing leniency because of her, that mattered. Dejin didn't respond. Just watched the city slide past through reinforced windows. Somewhere out there, Martinez was living free, building new operations, starting over. Somewhere out there, the empire Dejin had built was being dismantled piece by piece. Somewhere out there, life continued for everyone except the people who'd paid the price for his choices. But in here, In this transport vehicle heading toward maximum security prison, Dejin finally felt like he was doing something right, even if it came 20 years too late. Ok. Sentencing day arrived with autumn rain turning the city gray and cold. Dejin stood before Judge Morrison wearing prison-issued clothes and carrying no illusions about outcomes. Frost stood beside him. Prosecutors across the aisle. Gallery filled with victims' families, including a woman Dejin recognized as Felipe Martinez's widow, sitting beside a teenage girl who had her father's eyes. Judge Morrison reviewed documents. The courtroom waited in silence that felt like held breath. Mr. Vesper, she began. This court has reviewed extensive evidence detailing 2 decades of criminal activity. Murder, racketeering, money laundering, crimes that destroyed families and corrupted institutions. The scope of harm is difficult to overstate. Dejin kept his eyes forward. Didn't look at the widow. Couldn't. However, Judge Morrison continued, the court has also reviewed Agent Chen's final statement. Her testimony about your capacity for change, your refusal to cooperate with prosecutors not to protect criminal networks, but to maintain principle, your rejection of legal strategies that would have weaponized her feelings, and your insistence that her final words not be used to reduce your sentence. She set down the papers, met Dejin's eyes directly. These facts don't absolve your crimes. They don't erase harm you've caused, but they suggest something important about justice and redemption. About whether people are defined solely by their worst actions or whether they're capable of becoming something different. The courtroom was silent enough to hear rain against windows. The law prescribes life imprisonment for crimes you've committed, Judge Morrison said. And if I were sentencing based solely on criminal history, that's what you'd receive. But the law also allows for consideration of mitigating factors, of genuine remorse, of demonstrated change. Dejin's chest tightened. Therefore, the court sentences you to 40 years in federal prison. No parole for the first 25 years. After that, you'll be eligible for review based on behavior and demonstrated rehabilitation. She paused. You'll be 72 years old before potential release. You'll have spent more years in prison than you spent building your empire. And every day of that sentence should remind you of lives you destroyed and choices you can't undo. The gavel struck. 40 years. Not life, but close enough. Felipe Martinez's widow stood, walked out without looking at Dejin. The teenage girl followed. Their absence felt like verdict more final than anything the judge could pronounce. They transported Dejin to FCY Victorville, maximum security federal prison in California desert. Hot, isolated. The kind of place where time moved differently. His cell was 8 by 10, concrete bed, metal desk, small window showing endless sand. He had books, limited recreation. Occasional visitors, though nobody came those first months except Frost handling legal details. Dejin spent the days reading, thinking, replaying 3 years of Victoria moving through his office like furniture while documenting everything that would destroy him. She'd been right about all of it. Everyone was replaceable. Loyalty was temporary. Trust was currency that depreciated the moment you spent it. But she'd also been wrong. Because somewhere between performance and reality, they'd both become something more than their roles required. Both felt things that compromised objectives. Both made choices that hurt them to protect the other. That had to mean something, even if it ended with her dead and him in prison for 40 years. 6 months into his sentence, Dejin received an envelope. No return address. Postmarked from D.C. Inside was a single photograph. Victoria. Smiling. Not the professional FBI headshot, not surveillance footage, just a candid picture of her at some cafe, coffee in hand, genuinely happy. On the back, handwriting Dejin didn't recognize. She asked me to send this if anything happened to her, said you'd understand what it meant. A friend. Dejin stared at the photograph, at the woman who'd been Celine Vale, who'd sat at that desk for 3 years becoming invisible while learning how to destroy him completely, who'd died on wet asphalt trying to save him anyway. He taped the photo to his cell wall, the only decoration, the only thing that mattered. And every morning when he woke to concrete ceiling and desert heat, he looked at it and remembered what it felt like to be human for a few months before everything burned down. Okay, years passed. Federal prison had rhythm. Wake at 6. Breakfast. work detail. Lunch, recreation, dinner, lockdown. The days became weeks, became months, became years. Daejin kept his head down, followed rules, avoided conflicts. The other prisoners mostly left him alone after word spread about who he'd been and what he'd done. Respect or fear, impossible to tell. Didn't matter either way. He read extensively. Philosophy, history, literature, books that helped him understand the world he'd spent 20 years moving through without really seeing. He took courses, got his GED despite never finishing high school, started college credits through prison education program, studied criminal justice because the irony felt appropriate. He wrote letters, not to anyone specific, just thoughts, reflections, things he wished he'd said to people who weren't around to hear them anymore. Most of the letters were addressed to Victoria, apologizing for crimes he'd committed, for Felipe Martinez and everyone else whose deaths he'd ordered, for building an empire on blood and calling it success, thanking her for showing him what being human actually cost, for caring about him despite knowing better, for dying while trying to prove that even monsters were capable of change. He never sent the letters, just kept them in a box under his bed, growing pile of words that nobody would read. 8 years in, Frost visited with news. Martinez is dead, his lawyer said. Mexican authorities found his body 3 days ago. Cartel execution. Apparently he'd been trying to rebuild operations and stepped on wrong territory. Daejin absorbed that. The man who'd killed Victoria, who'd orchestrated everything, gone. Not through justice, just through violence finding its way home. How do you feel? Frost asked. Nothing. He's been dead to me since the moment Victoria stopped breathing. Fair enough. Frost pulled out more documents. There's something else. The federal government recovered most of your seized assets. They're establishing a victims fund, compensation for families hurt by your operations. Good. You're listed as eligible to contest the seizures, reclaim some assets for your own use after release. No. Daejin, every dollar I made came from blood. Let it go to people who actually deserve it. Frost didn't argue. Just made notes and moved on to other business. The years continued. Daejin aged. Gray appeared in his hair. Lines deepened around his eyes. The body he'd maintained through calculated discipline started showing wear from time and confinement. He watched younger prisoners arrive, heard their stories, recognized himself in their justifications and rationalizations. The way they framed violence as necessity, betrayal as strategy, destruction as just business. Sometimes he talked to them, shared his story, didn't preach or lecture, just told the truth about where that path led, about the cost of building empires on foundations that couldn't support weight. Some listened, most didn't. 15 years in, something changed. The prison hosted a victims advocacy program. Families of people hurt by crime could meet with perpetrators. Supervised, controlled, designed to give closure. Felipe Martinez's daughter requested meeting with Daejin. She was 28 now, lawyer, married, carried herself with dignity her father never got to see. They sat across from each other in a small room, guard posted outside, recorder running. "I'm Maria," she said. "Felipe Martinez's daughter." "I know, you look like him." "I don't remember him well. I was 13 when you had him killed." Her voice stayed level, clinical, but pain lived underneath. So, my mother told me stories, said he was a good man, hard worker, loved his family. I'm sure he was all those things. Then why did you kill him? Daejin met her eyes. Because he saw something he shouldn't have. Because he was a liability. Because in my world, loose ends were fatal and I chose my empire over his life. That's it? That's the reason? That's the reason. There's no deeper explanation, no secret justification. I wanted to protect my operations and he was in the way, so I had him murdered. Maria's hands curled into fists on the table. Do you understand what you took from us? My mother raised 3 children alone. We struggled, we suffered. All because you decided my father's life mattered less than your criminal organization. I understand, and I'm sorry. That doesn't fix anything. Doesn't bring him back. Doesn't erase your pain. But I am sorry. My mother died 2 years ago. Cancer. She spent her last months asking why. Why her husband had to die, why we had to suffer, why justice took so long. Tears gathered in Maria's eyes. didn't fall. I couldn't give her answers because there aren't any, just your choices and our consequences. Daejin felt the weight of it, all of it. 20 years of decisions that had rippled outward, destroying people he'd never met. Your father deserved better, he said quietly. You deserved better. I can't change what I did. Can't undo harm I caused. All I can do is accept responsibility completely and spend whatever life I have left trying to understand the cost of choices I made. Is that supposed to make me feel better?
No, it's supposed to be honest. You came here for truth. That's all I have to give you. Maria stood, wiped her eyes, looked at him with expression caught between hate and something more complicated. I hope you suffer, she said. I hope every day in this place reminds you of what you took from families like mine. It does. I promise you, it does. She left. Daejin sat alone in the room. Guard eventually came to escort him back to his cell.
And that night, he added another letter to the box. This one addressed to Felipe Martinez, apologizing directly, accepting that sorry would never be enough but offering it anyway because nothing else existed. Saita. 20 years into his sentence, something unexpected happened. The parole board agreed to review his case. Daejin sat before 5 people who held his future in their hands. They reviewed his file, his behavior record, his education, his participation in victims' advocacy programs. You've been a model prisoner, the board chair said. No violations, extensive rehabilitation efforts. Multiple victims have submitted letters acknowledging your remorse. That doesn't mean I deserve parole. Perhaps not. But it means you've demonstrated change. The question is whether that change is genuine or strategic. Does it matter? The harm I caused exists regardless of whether I've changed. It matters for determining whether you pose continued threat to society. Daejin considered. I'm 67 years old. I have no criminal network, no resources, no desire to rebuild what I destroyed. If you release me, I'll spend whatever time I have left trying to make amends that can never actually balance the scales. If you keep me here, I'll continue doing the same work inside these walls. Either way, I'm not a threat. Just a man trying to die with slightly less blood on his hands. The board deliberated privately. They denied parole. Daejin felt relief more than disappointment. 5 more years passed. He turned 72. His lawyer retired. The new attorney was younger, didn't know the full history, just saw an elderly prisoner who'd served 25 years and might qualify for compassionate release. Your health is declining, the attorney said. The court might consider early release based on medical necessity. My health is fine. You've had 2 heart incidents in 6 months. The prison medical staff is concerned. I'm staying until my sentence is complete or I die, whichever comes first. The attorney looked confused. You want to die in prison? I want to serve the time I owe, complete it, not negotiate early exit because my body's failing. That's unusual. That's principle. But the decision was taken from him 8 months later when his heart failed during the night. Emergency medical response, prison hospital, stabilization, and then, because federal prisons weren't equipped for long-term critical care, transfer to outside facility under guard. Daejin woke in hospital bed with machines beeping and federal marshal posted at the door. The doctor was young, efficient, delivered news like he was reading from a script. Your heart is failing. Medication can manage symptoms, but you need surgery. Complex procedure. High risk at your age. And if I refuse surgery, you'll die within months, maybe weeks. Then I refuse. The doctor blinked. Excuse me? I refuse surgery. I refuse treatment beyond basic palliative care. When my heart finally gives out, let it. Mr. Vesper, we can extend your life. I've already lived longer than I deserved. I'm ready for it to end. They argued. Doctors, lawyers, prison officials. Everyone had opinions about whether he should be forced into life-saving treatment. Eventually, they accepted his decision. Hospice care, prison hospital ward. Comfort measures only. Daejin lay in the bed watching days pass, strength fading, body shutting down in stages. He'd spent 47 years building and destroying, 3 years being documented by someone he'd trusted, 26 years paying for crimes he'd committed. And now? Now he was just waiting for the last piece to fall. His final visitor arrived on a gray afternoon. Not a lawyer, not a doctor, not anyone official. An elderly woman, late 70s. Moving carefully with cane, face lined with decades of living. Dae-jin didn't recognize her until she spoke. "Hello, Dae-jin." Victoria's mother. He tried sitting up, failed. The machines attached to him protested. "Mrs. Chen," he managed. I know. Victoria told me about you. Before she died. Told me everything." She settled into the chair beside his bed. "She asked me to visit if you ever reached this point. Said you'd need to hear something." "What?" Mrs. Chen pulled out an envelope. Old, worn, sealed with Victoria's handwriting across the front. "For Dae-jin, when it ends." She opened it, read aloud. "Dae-jin, if you're hearing this, it means my mother kept her promise, and you survived long enough to serve most of your sentence. I'm glad. Not because I want you suffering, but because I want you learning what accountability actually costs. I spent 3 years hating you, then 3 months caring about you, then died trying to save you. That progression should have been impossible, but somehow it happened anyway. I don't know if you're actually different now than when we met. I don't know if people can change that fundamentally, or if we're all just acting better while staying the same underneath. But I know you tried, and I know that mattered to me even when it shouldn't have. So here's what I want you to understand as you're dying. You were a monster. You committed terrible crimes. You hurt people who didn't deserve it, and you're paying for that now, as you should. But you were also capable of being human, of caring about someone despite knowing better, of choosing principle over survival, of becoming something marginally better than your worst self. That doesn't erase the harm, doesn't balance any scales, but it means you weren't only the monster. You were also the man who could have been different if he'd chosen differently earlier. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, not because it fixes anything, but because holding hatred for a dying man serves no purpose except poisoning whoever carries it. And I want you to die knowing that despite everything, some part of me loved you. The real you. The person underneath the crimes and empire and calculated violence. That love didn't change what you were, but it proved you were capable of being seen as human by someone who knew exactly what you'd done. Deal with that knowledge. Let it be the last thing you carry. Victoria. Mrs. Chen finished reading, folded the letter carefully, set it on the bedside table. She wrote that 3 weeks before the detention center assault, Mrs. Chen said quietly. Knew she might not survive. Wanted you to have it anyway. Dae-jin couldn't speak. Tears ran hot down his face. First time he'd cried since Victoria died on that asphalt 26 years ago. She forgave you, Mrs. Chen continued. I don't know if I can. You destroyed my family, killed Felipe, got my daughter killed, left wounds that never fully healed. Her voice cracked. But Victoria asked me to give you this. Asked me to let you die knowing someone saw your humanity. So I'm here, honoring her final request. I'm sorry, Dae-jin whispered. For all of it. For Felipe. For Victoria. For everything I took from your family. I know you are. Victoria told me that too. Said your remorse was genuine, even if it came too late to matter. Mrs. Chen stood slowly. I hope whatever comes next is kinder to you than what you did to others, though I doubt it will be. She left. Dae-jin lay alone with Victoria's letter beside him. Read it again and again, until the words blurred and his strength failed and the machine started alarming. Medical staff rushed in, tried stabilizing him, failed. His heart was giving out, finally, permanently. The doctor asked if he wanted them to try resuscitation. Dae-jin shook his head. They stepped back, turned off the machines, let nature finish what time had started. His vision narrowed, darkened. The hospital room faded into gray distance. And in those final moments, Dae-jin saw Victoria. Not the federal agent, not the undercover operative, just Celine. Standing in his office 3 years into her assignment, looking at him with expression that suggested she was seeing past the monster to whatever remained underneath. You were right, he tried saying. Couldn't tell if the words were audible or just thoughts dissolving. About everything, I was the monster. But you showed me I could be human too. The gray deepened. His chest stopped moving, heart went still. And Dae-jin Vesper, crime lord, murderer, empire builder, and finally just a man who'd learned too late what being human actually cost. Died in a prison hospital bed holding a letter from the woman who destroyed and saved him in equal measure. The federal marshal noted time of death, 3:47 p.m. The doctor signed paperwork. They removed his body to the morgue, and the story that had started with invisibility and power ended with silence and accountability. No redemption, no salvation. Just consequences accepted and time served, and one final truth acknowledged, that even monsters were capable of becoming human. But that capability didn't erase the blood. It just meant dying with slightly less weight on a soul that had carried too much for too long. 3 months later, a small memorial service happened at the federal prison. Not for Dejin, for the victims of his crimes, families he'd hurt, lives he'd destroyed. Maria Martinez spoke. Now 39, still carrying her father's eyes, still living with consequences of choices Dejin had made decades ago. Justice is complicated, she said to the gathered families. We want punishment. We want suffering. We want the people who hurt us to feel what we felt. And sometimes we get that. Dejin Vesper spent 26 years in prison, died there, paid with everything he had. But that payment doesn't give us back what we lost. My father is still gone. My childhood is still marked by his absence. My mother died without closure. All the punishment in the world doesn't undo harm. So what's the point? Why pursue justice if it doesn't actually heal us? I think the point is that accountability matters. That people facing consequences for their actions means the world isn't completely random. That harm acknowledged and punished is different from harm ignored and dismissed. Dejin Vesper died accepting responsibility for what he'd done. That doesn't fix anything, but it means something. It means we mattered enough to be remembered. Our pain mattered enough to be answered. That's not redemption, it's just truth. The kind that hurts but needs saying anyway. She stepped down. The service continued. Families shared memories of people lost, lives destroyed, futures stolen. And somewhere in a box of unclaimed property at FCY Victorville, Victoria's photograph remained taped to a concrete wall that would never see its owner again. The empire Dejin had built was gone, dismantled completely. His name became case study in criminal justice courses. Warning about hubris and consequence. Victoria Chen became legend in FBI circles, the undercover operative who'd spent 3 years invisible while documenting everything, who died protecting her investigation, whose final testimony changed how prosecutors thought about complicated defendants. And between them, in the space where monster and human had briefly overlapped, something had existed that neither could fully explain. Not love exactly, not redemption, just recognition that people were more complicated than their worst actions. That being human meant sometimes caring about people who'd hurt you. That forgiveness didn't erase harm, but sometimes allowed moving forward with slightly less weight. The story ended there. No sequels, no returns, no last-minute revelations, just silence and memory. And the slow work of living with choices that could never be undone, which, in the end, was all anyone could do. The human part, the hard part, the part that mattered even when it hurt.